April 7th, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First, I want to thank in advance all the people who are here tonight to speak with us. I know that you've been through so many of these meetings in the last month or two, and we're in the home stretch. So thank you in advance for your time tonight. First, we have First Select Woman, Brenda Kupchik. Brenda, are you there? Yes, I see.
Good evening, Madam Moderator.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. So if you could help us out with your office, and then I know you'll address the Conservation Department.
Right. So I was just going to do a little budget presentation as well. Had Jennifer email the body an updated version of the presentation, which reflects the changes that were done by the Board of Selectmen and by the Board of Finance. So this is the most updated information.
Thank you.
So I just would like to start off by, publicly once again thanking our finance department and all our department heads, town employees, for all their hard work over this very long budget process. It has been a difficult last several months with arrests of our fellow employees and the transition of a new administration over the past 18 months. I want to thank all of our employees for staying positive and open to change as we move forward. I especially want to thank, again, publicly, our Director of Public Health, Sam Cleary, and his department, along with Chief Dennis McCarthy, the town's Emergency Management Director, for going above and beyond the call of duty for this past year. I also want to thank Selectman Flynn and Board of Finance Chairman Jim Brown and RTM leader Pam Iacono for their consistent input over the last several months, working directly with me to help craft a responsible budget that addresses the concerns and did address the concerns of the Board of Finance and the needs of our town during this very difficult year. I also want to thank all of you, our elected officials and volunteers who serve on boards and commissions that make our community a better place to live and work. It's an honor to serve as Fairfield's first select woman and work with all the amazing people in our town government. My budget, as I said to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, continues to modernize town government with the introduction of best practices, technological improvements that are grounded in a customer service-centric approach for a more user-friendly experience for our residents and our businesses. This budget services Fairfield's long-term liabilities, expands senior tax and disabled relief, and most importantly, preserves a firm foundation for our town. The foundation is strengthened by paying off debt and maintaining our AAA bond rating, financing important funds that keep our town on solid financial ground and increases spending for the Board of Education. If we look back at 2020, it was a difficult year for many, especially for those who lost loved ones, family, and friends to COVID-19. And at times, nearly 20% of our people were unemployed, while wages remained flat or declined for many in our community, while small businesses were struggling. My goal for the last year was to help our businesses grow, but I had to pivot to assist our small business community so they could just simply survive, while also working with our town's emergency management team to keep our town and our residents safe. This included providing small business grants, streamlining permitting to keep businesses open amidst the new regulations designed to stop the spread of the virus. We were also able to completely reopen town government within 48 hours of the initial shutdown, with all essential services operating remotely for the first time in our town's history. Despite the challenges the pandemic brought, we were still able to initiate a reorganization of town departments, restructuring of personnel, employee training, online permitting, and addressing the root causes of corruption to ensure that it never happens again. But we still have a lot of work to do. The state and town continue to struggle with the economic consequences of the pandemic. My budget proposal looks to support our residents and businesses while also creating an environment for growth. I have a slide in here which I did last year, which is just sort of Fairfield at a glance with all of our sort of data points, and I won't go through all of those. And then our budgetary objective and goals, support economic development, maintain excellent schools, modernize town government, invest in town infrastructure, and long-term contractual obligations. The highlights is increases last year's education budget by $7.5 million, funds 100% of the payments toward long-term contractual obligations, replenishes accounts used to subsidize last year's 0% tax increase, funds retiree health care, maintains town's reserves, town's pension benefits, and salary reserves, and funding delayed maintenance of town buildings, roads, bridges, and technology. Current town reorganization status is a total full-time positions reduced from 463.6 to 459.6. The VRIP participants were 17. Net position reduction was 4. Net savings 540,000. This budget expands and improves senior and disabled tax relief to maximize benefits for our low-income seniors. And I want to personally thank Chris DeWitt for his chairmanship of the committee and for all the hard work that he put into it. It limits also the mill rate increase to 1.12, and that's a number reflected after the Board of Finance, their work that they did. And there's a budget summary page. The amounts have been updated based on the changes made by the Board of Finance. A list of those changes have been shared with the RTM moderator. This breakout of spending is a little different than that has been presented in the past. We included a category called shared expense. These amounts are more accurate allocation of dollars between education and the town, as well as costs that benefit both the town and the operation of our public schools. The biggest change since I proposed my budget is that we learned that our town surplus had grown this year to more than $3 million. As a result, I recommended that the Board of Finance use some of that amount in a reasonable way and a responsible way to help reduce next year's tax rate. When I proposed my budget, the mill rate increase was 1.98. You can see that from this table that the percentage is now down to 1.12. The next slide is where the money comes from. This table just shows you an overview of where the money comes from to fund the operation of our town and our schools. Probably comes as no surprise that we rely heavily on property tax revenue. Shown above is the current tax year levy. Overall, property tax revenue represents about 92% of all town revenue. Where the money goes. This slide shows some of the broad categories and how the town spends its money. The single largest driver of spending in the budget is our contribution to retiree health care, which we call OPEB. The next slide is if the CLIPs were funded in last year's budget, and it shows that in addition to OPEB, we have several other long-term contractual obligations that are driving the overall budget increase. In total, these items equal $10.2 million of the $16.1 million in increases. The box at the bottom shows how the budget proposal would be different if funding the CLIPs had been included last year. And then the next slide has the pie chart similar to what I did last year. And within our overall spending, there are education-related costs that are paid out of the town side of the budget. And when you factor that in, Board of Ed spending represents about 65% of our overall budget, and the town is approximately 35%. If you look at the next slide, this is basically a chart giving a breakdown of the significant increases in the budget. The point here is that many of the cost increases are long-term contractual obligations, and they are part of the education budget. Current town operations are increasing by only 12%, and we are doing a lot with that relatively small amount of money. The projected budget requests are based on a continued 3.63% average yearly increase. And this is what I did similarly last year with showing the growth in spending on the Board of Ed side and showing the population growth, which I thought was, relevant for us to have all the town bodies to have again. The Board of Education budget request was $194,084,2020, a 5.19% increase. A $2 million reduction to the $9.6 million that the Board of Ed requested. $2 million is less than 1% of the total education expenditures. Excuse me. This budget increases, This budget increases more than $7.5 million over last year. 10 years, and it's been 10 years, I wrote in this slide, it's been 10 years since the last Board of Ed operating budget, and I've spoken to the superintendent about this as well. All education-related expenses represent 65% of the budget, and I believe that the funding in this budget represents shows the town's commitment to our education. The next slide is showing how we're trying to do what we're doing with modernizing. And I know that I committed to the RTM that I would come back in the fall to talk in more detail of how our reorganization efforts are working and to give an update in more detail of how they are working and what is happening. We are implementing the online permitting software. We were a little bit delayed due to COVID and some of the the VRIP work that we had to do, as well as the budget work. But we are working to get that going, and it will be happening soon. That's going to include all our permitting departments: planning, zoning, conservation, historic district, engineering, health, sewer, buildings, fire marshal, tax collector, and tax assessor. Automated time and attendance workforce management system, automated system to monitor employee time, control labor costs, and minimize compliance risks, while improving workforce productivity and service to our public. That's actually a bit more complicated than you think. It's a whole system that we did pay for, but we have to work with the payroll department, and there's a lot of complicated computer work that needs to be done to link the two systems together. We're going to start it off at DPW and then move it through each department. The reason we want to start it off at DPW is because now currently they line up every morning and punch in, one by one by one by one. It's also very difficult for the library staff as well, because I think I've shared this in the past. They literally pass around a paper to all the employees, and they have to fill in their times, and then the supervisor has to sign off, and then the head librarian has to sign off. It's very inefficient. Digital transformations we're doing throughout town hall. So in summary, I believe this is a fiscally responsible budget, that it protects taxpayers, enables growth, significantly increases education funding, provides critical maintenance of town infrastructure, and it limits mill rate increase despite the impact of the pandemic and despite all the cliffs that we all agreed to put off last year. And it preserves our AAA credit rating long-term fiscal health of our town. And I'll open it up, Madam Moderator, it's up to you if you want to open this up at this point for some questions, or if you'd just like me to go into my budget. Can't hear you, Karen. Can you hear her?
Karen, you're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. No, Brenda, I think we're all set, so please go ahead with your budget. Thank you.
Okay. My budget is on page 46 in the budget book, my office budget. So it's, as you can see, it just goes through the regular payroll, the part-time payroll, longevity, all of the different printing, nothing really much. There's a very small change in last year's budget. And it lists on page 47 the staff and then the salaries. And at the bottom, there was a little confusion about this last year. Excuse me one moment. Be able to see that. There was a little confusion about the selectmen piece last year. If you see part-time current, those two positions, those are our both of our selectmen, Mr. Flynn and Mrs. Lefkowitz.
Any questions for the first select woman on her office budget? Representative Pistilli.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Sharon Pistilli, District 3. Madam Moderator, through you to the first select woman. I had a question regarding the Chief Administrative Officer position. So when that position was originally approved at the special Board of Finance meeting, that was like in December of what feels like about 12 years ago. I don't, sorry. We had, noted that that was a pretty large percentage and a large increase of the first select woman's office staff. So right now that salary is 27% of the total payroll of the office, not including the part-time line for Mr. Flynn and Ms. Lefkowitz. And so at that time, I believe that we had asked for, and I believe you committed that you would give us a return on investment and give us an explanation, like a detailed explanation of what the investment of the $120,000 by adding that position would render to us. So I was just wondering if you have details on that, or if you could before the vote, provide it before the vote.
Could absolutely provide you a written update on the work that Mr. Bremer's done for the town. I would just say one thing, and we will provide a list of items that he works on, but I would just say that the work that he's done, double checking purchasing of the Board of Ed, has netted in a significant, and I mean significant savings to our town, that more than pays for his salary. So that's just one piece, although I think it's a significant piece. And there are additional items just like that, but I'm happy to supply that to the moderator and she could share that with you before the vote.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Representative Gerber.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute before you went on to the first select woman's budget. I still have a question about the introduction. Am I too late?
No.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
First select woman Kupchak. I had a question about the shared expenses. Is there a reason those aren't broken out between Board of Ed and town? And could you provide that information and include it going forward if it's possible?
Well, good evening, Representative Gerber. It's nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Can you, what do you mean? Break it out?
Well, the shared expenses is a big chunk and a big change in the way you're presenting it. And unless I missed it, I didn't see, how that number, which sort of distorts the way you look at things in prior years, how that is broken, that large cost is broken into the various components, but also how those are split between Board of Ed and town.
Yeah, I mean, I could have Jared come up and do that, and I actually think that it's actually more transparent than it's been done in the past, because I don't think the average everyday citizen realizes, when they see an education budget and they see the town budget, I don't think they realize that the town picks up a lot of expenses that are solely for the education, but it's not in their budget. We actually pay it out of our side. So I just thought it was more transparent and honest for people to at least see it in the way it really is. But I'm happy to have Jared come up and talk about it in a little bit more detail for you, if that's what you'd like. Well,
the reason I'm asking is, unless I'm missing it in the budget book, I just see a number broken out, and you actually can't tell how much the town is picking up on, or how much of that number is Board of Ed. And all I'm asking for is, there should be I think there should be a separate page that shows that very large number and how that's split between the town and the Board of Ed over the 2 years, and that's all. That would make it I mean, right now, I think it's a step in the definitely. It's good to have more detail, step in the right direction, but it doesn't really tell me anything if it's not broken out between the various users of that money.
Right. I mean, it is a PowerPoint, and it is a little bit more clear when you read the budget in more detail, the expenses. And most of us know what they are, right? But the average citizen probably doesn't know. Do you want Jared to come up and just go through those? Or
I mean, well, I can't imagine that unless he has all the detail behind it. But it's a big number. So, it just says town and Board of Ed. So if Jared has the breakouts into town and Board of Ed, sure, yeah. Otherwise, you could just provide it, in a email.
Well, I mean, he could email it to you. I know you have a very long agenda tonight. So if you want him to send you that, I'd be happy to have send it to the moderator, and then she could share it with the membership, if that's commendable.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for the First Select Woman at this point? Representative Vergara.
Hi, Representative Vergara from District 7. Hi, First Select Woman Kopchick. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it's been a very long budget process, and I've been watching the meetings, so I know you've spent a lot of time talking about this stuff, so I appreciate it. Thank you. I just had a couple of questions about the reorganization, and I wanted to see if the reductions in staff include part-time workers.
No, part-time, I answered this in the email that you sent to the moderator. So
oh, I apologize, I hadn't seen it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I replied to Karen, I think it was yesterday. But it includes all the information about that. Part-time staff has never been counted in any budgets as far as head counts. They're not included in the overall CAFRs and any of those items. So full-time staff is the ones that are counted typically, because obviously those are full-time employees. Like DPW has a ton of part-time staff. The library has a ton of part-time staff, Park and Rec, and even conservation. They utilize a large amount of part-time staff. As you remember, in the early days of the pandemic, I laid off all the part-timers and saved our town a significant amount of money, but they aren't considered part of our overall employees because they're not full-time.
Okay, thank you. And then also, the word reorganization comes up a lot. I think, I don't know how many times, but I think it's like maybe over 100. And so in the town charter, it says that a reorganization requires an approval by the Board of Selectmen and then an ordinance by the RTM. Why hasn't that occurred if we are engaging in a reorganization?
I am not aware of, I have not spoken to the town attorney on that or any of that. I'm not aware in the charter where that is listed or how it's, what the language actually says. But during this entire process, the town attorney nor anyone else said reorganizing our town government. Now, I'm not sure if they meant, maybe they mean in the charter reorganizing the way for a select person, Board of Finance, RTM, they may mean that because I know some other towns moved from our form of government to a mayoral system with a town council. So maybe that's what they mean, but I'm not sure. Obviously I'm not an attorney, so
Okay.
that's what they may have in the town charter.
I'll reserve the question for Mr. Baldwin because I do think that the specific language in the charter is section 6.1G in the charter, and it does specifically mention anything that relates to departments or staffing. So I'll ask him that, but thank you again.
Thank you.
I have to apologize to the RTM. I thought I had forwarded the first select woman's response, and I've been having internet issues, but I just sent it now to Representative Vergara's questions. Are there any other questions for the first select woman? Okay, I don't think so. Brenda, please go ahead. I think you're going to speak about conservation.
Correct.
Thank you.
I also presented this to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance as well. Obviously, you are aware that our director was arrested, and so the Board of Selectmen voted to hire a headhunting firm to assist us in the search for a highly qualified conservation director. And we have hired one, and they are in the midst of their work. They are interviewing the Conservation Commission, the people of the Shellfish Commission, and others. I've asked them to also include a FAIR plan in their interview process, and also the Justice Task Force, a Racial and Equity Task Force, just to get some feedback. I'm not sure if everybody on the RTM is aware, so how this works, the Conservation Commission director is a little bit different, whereas the Conservation Commission actually chooses the director, and I have to then approve it. So it's a dual process, and so I'm hoping that this firm that is very highly qualified, very well-respected firm is going to produce us some high-quality applicants that are going to be, I hope, beneficial to our community. So right now we don't have a director, and as you know, I eliminated the administrative person in the conservation department in the budget, and I bumped up the inland wetland part-time position to a full-time position, and that's Sarah, who's in our department now. I eliminated the admin position, and we created a floater position that's in zoning. We pulled an admin from zoning, and what I did was place a floater admin in the building department, but they're going to float between the building, the conservation, and the zoning department and assist all three departments. I wanted to do more floaters, but we didn't get a whole lot of admins taking the VRIP, so we were a little bit restricted there. And so I know there's been a lot of concern over some of the changes I made in the conservation department, and I do understand that, and I've tried to speak to everyone. I have spoken to everyone who's called me on that, and I have replied to everyone who's emailed me. with their concerns. And I understand that people, that change sometimes can be a little difficult for people. And as I've said throughout this process, that, sometimes change can be difficult, but you never know if you're going to be able to change unless you try. And so I believe, just based on being in town hall every single day for the last almost 19 months, and all of my hard work with the departments, really spending a tremendous amount of time with them, and not just on the budget, but also reorganization, because before VRIP passed, I met for months with our department heads in this conference room, going over all their departments and changes that they thought might work and things that could work, as well as the modernization efforts and the online permitting. I believe that this will work. But as I have said to other boards, if we feel that this isn't sufficient, if there's some issue down the line that we see that's not being handled in the Conservation Department, that I will pivot and ask for funding from the Board of Finance if I need to add another part-time staff person to help pick up any slack, if there is any, to make sure that the department is running appropriately. And obviously the department, you can see the information there about it. It's similar. The only real change is what I just mentioned about the changes, but other than that, it's fairly stable as it was last year.
Okay, thank you. Representative Gerber?
Yeah, hi. First Selectman Kupchak, Bill Gerber. I read in the paper that the former mayor of Trumbull, Tim Herbst, is going to have a role in conservation, but I couldn't see exactly what line would that be on, and what is his role?
So Mr. Herbst works for a firm that I hired probably a few weeks after I was sworn in. As you know, the town engages in a lot of legal work. The town attorney obviously could never do all the legal work that this town generates. And so as in the past, First Select people have hired firms to come and assist with different things. Mr. Herbst's firm assists us with labor work and also has been assisting us with conservation. As a matter of fact, worked directly with Brian Carey and Annette from the very beginning. He's a land use. He has an extraordinary amount of experience in land use, but his firm has different experience, and they do some appeals as well. So would it be listed in here, Representative?
It's under legal?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I thought he was somehow like playing a role
No. I know
with
that there was some fodder on social media, and I keep telling people, stop reading social media. Pick up the phone and call me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. But no, Mr. Herbst is not running the Conservation Department. And we did hire a firm, an environmental firm that works with a lot of municipalities, and they are assisting. They come in 3 days a week, and they work with the department, making sure that everything is prepared that they need for permits or whatever is needed, so that the Conservation Commission has all the data and the backup that they need to make the decisions when they have their meetings.
So his firm is he and his firm are doing that work.
No. The environmental firm, they actually, SLR, is a firm that deals solely with these types of issues.
Oh, that's not Tim Herbst's firm. That's a different firm.
No, we have subcontracted to assist us during the transition until we get a new director.
Okay.
Mr. Herbst has overseen, as his law firm is employed by the town, and they do labor work, they do conservation work, and some appeal work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. So what are we paying SLR, and where is the accounting for that? I am assuming that it's not accounted for in this budget because you're not anticipating for that expense to continue into FY22, but I was wondering where the accounting is for SLR.
So you're right, Representative, it is not included in this budget because we will have a new director. I'm assuming we will have a new director. We're on the right track. So that would not be an expense for this budget that you're looking at now. But we do have expenses. We're happy to send those to you if you want to see the costs that we're spending right now on the environmental firm.
Yes, I would. Thank you. And I also wanted to know why this contract didn't come to us as the RTM, because I thought we were supposed to vote on all contracts.
It was a temporary and an emergency contract.
But the emergency was of your creating, so I don't understand how that constitutes an emergency.
I was counseled by the town attorney that I could hire them to assist our conservation department.
And the conservation department had no role in hiring this firm.
The Conservation Commission?
The Conservation Commission.
No, they did not, but they have interacted with them. I called the chairperson the morning that my budget was released, and we had those changes, and I talked to her about them and put her directly in contact with the firm.
Okay, because that also seems to contravene their role under the charter in making these sorts of decisions for conservation. So it's concerning that contract is concerning to me, that it hasn't come before the Board of Selectmen, the RTM, and the Conservation Commission.
You know, I checked with the town attorney, and he could probably be able to explain that to you better. I apologize that he's not on the line tonight, but he's always open to you. I know you two have a lot of conversations, and he's happy to talk to you at all. But I always consult with the town attorney before I make decisions on matters of this, like this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Pistilli?
Hi, Sharon Pistilli, District 3. I had a question too for Mr. Herbst's firm and for SLR. Were either of these contracts that we entered into, did they go out to bid?
The law firm that Mr. Herbst works for, again, this would be a town attorney question, but I don't believe I don't know if we did a contract with the bond council that we currently have. I don't believe that the town bodies vote on those. I think that's under the purview of the CEO of the town. And as far as SLR, that I was advised that I could enter into that agreement on a temporary basis to fill a need.
And how long have we employed SLR at this point?
The budget came out on February, was it the end of February?
So this year?
It's been about a month. Yeah, it's since I made the change to the conservation department. So the night that my budget was released, that morning we made those changes. And so I reached out to them and they started the following week.
Okay, and then how long have we been under contract with Mr. Herbst's firm? Like, or do we pay them a retainer, or how does that work?
Everything goes through the town attorney, and they have been doing work for our town since I came into office.
Okay, and it didn't go out to bid?
I don't believe those ever go out to bid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any more questions for the first select woman? I think not. Thank you very much, Brenda. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and as always, I've had Jared writing down the things that I promised to follow up on, but, you know, anything that anyone wants to send to you, we're happy to answer. And as always, I will, again, offer myself up to any one of you. I'm available. I will talk to you on the phone if you would like to schedule a time to come in. I'm also available to sit and chat, and I hope that, I hope some of you will take me up on that.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Next on our agenda is the town clerk. That's budget number 1030. It's on page 49. Betsy, are you here?
Good evening, I'm here.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you want to give us a little, do you have anything to add before people ask questions, or?
The big increase in my budget is in direct correlation to the fact that there are currently bills up in the state legislature regarding voting. And we don't know what the process will be for the November election. This past year for the 2020 election, we had federal funds that were available to every town that we used. They were for the boxes that were located out in front of town hall. And that offset the overtime and the postage costs. We don't know what's going to take place. We just had a verification from the governor today that we received regarding one of his executive orders. We have guidance through any election events through May 20th, 2021. We don't know what's going to happen for November. So I put the money in for overtime, for the postage and printing, because instead of 3 ballot styles, we'll have 10.
Wow.
10
Thank you. I
RTM
know
districts.
That's right. Between that and the increase in real estate work this year, I know your office has been very busy.
We're bringing in conveyance tax money like you can't believe.
Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the town clerk?
I have a question, Madam Moderator. Mark McDermott, District 7.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I thought that your budget had been reduced by $21,000 and moved to contingency on 3 lines: the overtime line, the printing and binding, and the postage line. And so your budget was brought down to $587,078.
The Board of Selectmen, there was a motion, but it failed to put that money into contingency, and the Board of Finance did not put it into contingency either.
Okay, I just had a note there. I couldn't recall because I didn't I didn't write what the vote was. So it's still at that 5.07% increase.
Correct, because if it does go through, then I'll need to encumber funds, for the printing.
Okay,
So
thank
rather
you.
than go back through the bodies, that's why they did that.
Yep. Great, thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Any other questions for the town clerk? Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. Hi, Betsy.
Hey, Jill.
Hi. I have a question about your salary line. It increases by a little bit from 104K last year to 106 this year. Is that a contractually required salary increase, or?
No, the Board of Finance sets the salary for the position at the beginning of the term.
Oh, okay.
It's in the statutes. It has to be handled that way.
Oh, okay. So the Board of Finance did that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you, Betsy.
You're welcome.
Representative Monahan.
Hi, Veronica Monahan. I'm wondering, Betsy, is there any technology that is used to cross-check when someone is registered in Fairfield to vote, if they're also registered in another state to vote, and if there's any cross-checking done? I know this personally affected my family this year. So my daughter voted in Virginia, but also received a ballot for Fairfield. And I'm just wondering what's being done on that. Is there any technology? And how do you feel is that an issue?
We have every town in the state is on the statewide Connecticut voter registration system. So last year, I know for the absentee ballots, they were automatically sent out from the Secretary of the State's office. So they just did any active voter from Connecticut. I know that they clean it up as far as they get transcripts from other states. I don't know if they go directly to the local registrar or if they go to the Secretary of the State's office. I'm not certain on that.
Are there any other questions? I'm sorry. Veronica, did you have any more? Or you're all set.
No, it seems odd to me that someone who's registered in another state would receive a ballot for the state of Connecticut. And it doesn't seem to me as though there's any cross-checking that's done. I'm just wondering if anything on the local level is done, and if I just wanted to understand that process a little more, and who pays for a service like that.
I know that the Town Clerks Association is working with the Secretary of the State's office and also the Registrars of Voters Association, where we need, some bills that are going through the legislature to clean those kind of issues up. And we need to improve the infrastructure as far as, last year we had issues with issuing the ballots where the clearinghouse didn't get them out in time. So if all these new bills are going to go through with, no excuse absentees or early voting, the state needs to pay for improved infrastructure of the voting systems that we have.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Any other questions? I think we're all set. Thank you very much, Betsy.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is FairTV, which is item 1040 on page 51. Chairman Streltzer and Mr. Spino, are you here?
Yes, we are.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you this evening?
Fine, thank you. Did you want to chat a little bit about the budget or anything before we ask questions?
Well, this year we're looking at a budget of about $78,000. Manager's fee, $56,500. Freelance labor, $18,000, and then $3,500 in maintenance and repair line items. This past year, FairTV received over $96,000 in grants to pay for hardware upgrades. Over the years, we've received about $500,000 in total grants to maintain our hardware complement, and in some cases it helps supplement our freelance labor. And we continue to provide service to the town as we are this evening and what seems like every evening. And we're here to do our job, and we hope that you're happy with us.
Thank you. Are there any questions or for Mr. Spino and Mr. Streltzer? Representative Gerber.
I just had to say, Jerry, you're a rock star. Everyone appreciates you. So thank you. And I do, quick question is, are there any federal monies in on the revenue side on this budget for you? I didn't see any, but.
Well, no, we don't really. There's limited grants really for this kind of endeavor. There's a contribution that comes from the cable stations through your monthly bill that helps support public access in the state and any state, really. There's also a fund that has a periodic life. It's called the PEG-PISA fund, and it's a fund that the state collects, I think, like 0.1% of gross earnings from all cable entities, and they turn that money around and provide grants out into the state to entities like FairTV or other organizations that create content for public access. And there's also one other grant that was achieved through legislation actually that cut out $100,000 annually from the area we are in area 2. It's a complement of 6 towns here in our area, and that money goes to a regional provider, and the regional provider, well, we had to use some legislation to convince them to support us, and we prevailed, and so the 4 towns that participate in what's called the town-specific grant from the Cable Advisory Council has enjoyed, actually came up, that money initially started about 10 years ago, and it's really brought every town that does participate in that grant way ahead as far as equipment and capability to do what you do. But other than that, there's no like federal money that we can go to. Ed Markey from Massachusetts is a big proponent, but I guess they feel that the contribution that comes through the cable bill sort of paves the way when it's done properly, and it does when it's done properly. So you know, when we get some money now, we wouldn't mind if we've been in this experiment now for about 9 years. If we were asked if, you know, at some point that the legislation would be revisited, I'm sure that they would find that it's been successful, and it wouldn't be a bad thing if we were able to get a little bit more of that money in the future from that general pool that gets collected from our cable area. But that takes some beyond just regular conversation.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, yeah, also like COVID relief funds, things like that, whether or not.
Oh, well, you have a point. Don't know necessarily how we would address that. We have adapted to the COVID situation, as everybody knows, with virtual programming that this meeting is running under, and many meetings, and I have a feeling that it may even prevail to some degree once we're through this. It does provide a level of convenience in some ways, and in other ways, meeting in person is, of course, always elemental. But I haven't really seen or heard from other PEG stations that are necessarily enjoying COVID money. I think that may have to, if it's going to happen, I think it might have to come through the town structure, because that's where the money goes to, is the municipality, as opposed to an entity like FairTV.
So if Brenda's still on, or if Jared's listening, maybe there's money in COVID relief for FairTV, since it's so essential to us holding meetings and during this time.
Yes, if we were in this situation, I have to admit, and I pat myself on the back, I run a pretty tight ship. And, you know, once we get past the hardware issues, which this past grant totally upgraded our broadcast structure to, we have this thing with cable television and current technology. Cable television only puts out our signal at what's basically called an SD level signal, or analog. So it's not the crispiest image you can get. But if you were looking, but on our web stream, we get a much better image because we can pump a 1080 into that system. We wouldn't mind the cable companies one day giving us an HD band level feed where we can successfully present shared documents and things like that that are actually legible. But it's just not within our capability. Maybe if we can get a lobbyist to approach the cable companies to give us HD, but I don't really see them doing that. It's, of course, their bread and butter, and they do provide our channels for free, which I'm sure they feel is, you know, a major effort. And they've been good partners as far as, you know, over the years, you know, with what the parameters are. So,
Thank you so much, Jerry. Appreciate it. Yeah.
yeah, you're quite welcome.
Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Wolk, District 5. Hey, Jerry. Thanks for all that you do for us, our town, and to in the board. Anyway, you know, I've been an avid advocate to FairTV for a long time. But anyway, I just wanted to ask you, how's your equipment doing? Do you guys have enough money for new equipment, or you're all set?
Well, we're all set for now because with this last grant we got, along with the new broadcast hub, we were able to purchase a new updated camera and video production system. We don't get to use it very often. Unfortunately, we ordered it before COVID. It arrived last summer, and you know, we use it at the Board of Ed meetings. But other than that, we're hoping, you know, just like everybody else, we'd like to get that equipment working for a lot of reasons. One is so my guys can get familiar with it on a regular basis as opposed to intermittently. But this is not a suggestion to hasten anything, you know, irresponsibly as far as meetings. But we are in pretty good shape with equipment. You know, every 5 years you have to look at it though and evaluate what's in the marketplace, what the technologies that we can utilize within our platforms require. So, you know, it's not like one day we won't be needing equipment again. We're in pretty good shape this year for a few more years out.
Hey,
But
Jerry,
I can always think of something to get.
Hey, Jerry, this, you know, could be improved in the Board of Ed room. But my other question to you is, I remember a while back, you know, a couple of years ago, maybe we can bring this up to people who were not aware of this, but I remember, didn't we go to court with Soundview? And didn't you guys go to, not we, but you guys go to court with, you know, against Soundview?
All the local councils went, and we fought Soundview and won.
And won, right. And didn't that student, did some of that money come back to you guys to help you guys out?
Well, yes, it did. I mean, that money's been there all along. Soundview's always been a contentious partner in relation to money. When we first got it awarded, in the item you're talking about was a suit against trying to once again get that $100,000 out of Cable Advisory Council hands, where they were distributing it to the 4 participating towns that participated in the particular grant. And so, you know, one more try, it got to Superior Court here in Connecticut, and it was soundly, his suit was soundly put down. It was
sort of very, very long opinion in our favor, by the way.
Yes, exactly. But that didn't mean that we weren't still getting that money from the time that the initial law came about in 2009. The lawsuit you're talking about, I think, took place in 2011, and the decision was handed down in 12, but it didn't interrupt the funding. So that funding is still in place, and we do take advantage of it every year with a need. This year we'll actually be applying again. I'm looking to upgrade one of our production systems similar to the one we just bought. You know, so it's there and we take advantage of it.
Jerry, and this last thing, not a question, but just hopefully we can go back to informative programming like we used to have. So anyway, thanks for everything that you do and to Stu. All right, I appreciate everything.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you both very much. I don't see any more questions. Thanks for visiting us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for your continued support.
Sure. Thanks for everything you've done this year. It really was so helpful. Our next item is town plan and zoning. It's budget number 1110 on page 61 of our budget book. Mr. Wendt, are you here?
I am, Madam Moderator.
How are you tonight?
I'm well, thank you. Good to be with you.
Good.
Just a quick overview. There are two line items within this budget that show increases. The first is the fees and professional services line item is an increase of 48%, which is $12,100 for two reasons. One, for increased cost and frequency of court appeals. When we get an appeal, if a decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission is appealed, we need to prepare a transcript for that for the court, and we're seeing an uptick in the frequency and cost of those. And secondly, we are looking for an increase in the fee that we pay to MetroCog, our regional planning partners, for some additional support and administrative help for our update of our plan of conservation and development. So that's what's rolled into that $12,100 increase. The second line item is motor vehicle and lube, which shows a 39% increase, which which looks like a big increase, but it amounts to $220. All other line items are either zero or reductions for a net budget reduction of 10%, largely due to a retirement in some restructuring that you heard about earlier from the first selectwoman. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Wendt? Looks like no, I don't see any hands up or anything.
Sorry.
Representative Vergara.
Sorry. Jill Vergara, District 7. I had a question about the Plan of Conservation and Development. I know that we're overdue for revising it, and I've been waiting to go to the meetings and stuff. And I think that, you know, the pandemic interrupted some of the process, but I thought that we were going to get going with it again in December, and I haven't heard anything about it. I know it's a really important thing that the town needs to be working on.
I appreciate the question. Thank you. Firstly, we're not overdue. The POCD was last revised in 2016, so we are required to revise it every 10 years. So we are not overdue, but the commission does agree with you that we are still ongoing in an effort to do so. We did have some really good workshops, well-attended workshops last winter. Clearly, the pandemic slowed us down in our ability to have effective public engagement. But we have just, in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Committee, I've been working with Mark Barnhart in his office. He has some money, or received some money through the Board of Finance to update the town's affordable housing plan. And we are looking to leverage that opportunity as our next public outreach effort in conjunction with the POCD to have a community conversation on the topic of housing. So we have just engaged a consultant to assist us in that effort. So later this spring, we're hoping to announce some scheduled public engagement events.
So your department doesn't have an allotment for the POCD at all?
We are largely doing this in-house. We have been able to leverage other opportunities. The Planning and Zoning Commission completed in 2019 a transit-oriented development study in conjunction with the Economic Development Commission. We don't have a separate line item or our own consultant specifically for this, but we're hoping to be able to complete this in-house. Obviously, you know, we had some good momentum going and we had some really good public outreach events previous to the pandemic, and we're hoping to ramp that up later this spring with our housing public outreach.
And how many planners do we have in the department? How many of you all together?
Well, there are 4 professional staff people in addition to the administrative, the admin positions.
Okay, is that typical for a town of our size for planning?
I would say we run on the lean side. We have had larger staffing more in the past, more in the zoning enforcement end of the shop. But with technology and our ability to leverage other opportunities, I think we'll be able to manage this project.
Okay. I have seen, and this isn't, I don't mean to be this as a criticism to your department, because I think you do a tremendous amount of work. But when I first came to the town, I've been here for about 12 years, I didn't understand that we had planners in town, because it didn't seem like we had a thought out way of having businesses develop and grow in the town. And I still see that process happening where I don't see a plan so much. And it's a concern that I have. Like, I've heard people asking that we split zoning from planning and have separate, some towns do it that way so that there can be a focus level of attention on the planning. But I do see it as a problem with our town that it seems to just kind of like grow uncontrollably. And I'd love to, I know that that's one thing the strategic plan is working on, but I think it's important to have professionals doing it, people who are trained to do this. So I'm concerned with you saying that it's a lean department, because I think it's a very important department for a town.
Representative Gerber.
Oh, hi, Mr. Wendt. Bill Gerber, District 2. What's the status of the online permitting system?
The online permitting system is the first department to roll out. It's going to be the building department. So that's going to be the first department to, I couldn't tell you sitting here exactly what the status is of that, but I know the plan is for building to be first, and then our other departments such as ours to follow thereafter.
Okay, so wait, billing department relating to I'm sorry, to what?
To building permits. I mean, I said the whole
billing for building permits.
No, I'm sorry, building, not billing.
Oh, I thought you said billing. I'm sorry, it was my fault.
No, yeah. So the first module that's going to do is planned to come online will be the building department, and once that's up and running, then the plan is to expand that to other departments.
Okay, so it's not up and running yet, and so okay, then when do you expect that to happen for the building department? Do you know?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, so you don't know. I mean, so the process of getting permitted may not happen through the online system, may not happen this year.
I'll just jump in if that's okay, Madam Moderator.
Yes, that's
sounds okay
fine.
to me, Brenda.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we are a little delayed, Bill, due to VRIP and some of the changes and also the pandemic, but we're going to be opening it up, launching it in the building department. I just want to give a quick update that I have interviewed building officials, and I have chose a new one, and he'll be coming on board next week, and I'm not going to announce the name or anything yet, but he is very experienced with online permitting. And so we are going to be able to launch that with our new director. And so, yes, that's happening this year, just to answer your question.
Oh, it's happening this year, okay. And that's an essential part of your efficiency program, right? You need that in order to cut, with the staff reductions, right?
Well, also just, yes, and ease of use by our residents and business. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Wendt? Okay, I think not. So thanks very much for joining us tonight, Mr. Wendt.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is purchasing. It's item 3030 on page 145. Mr. Foley, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you very much for having me.
Sure. So anything you'd like to mention before we open it up to questions?
I can just give a brief overview. So my name is Gerald Foley. I'm the town's director of the purchasing department. My office, basically there's three of us. There's myself. I have, and then I have two buying positions. And what we do is our office is the primary source of channeling all the purchasing for the town, for both the town and the board. We process approximately 10,000 purchase orders a year. We also do project management services of major projects for the town. So we're a very busy office with a very small staff. So hence in the current budget, through the assistance of the First Selectwoman's office, we had requested an additional person in the office, and that's the major modification in the budget is due to that additional staff.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Foley? Representative Gerber.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Foley. This is Bill Gerber, District 2. Can you explain in a little more detail your relationship with the Board of Ed? Do you do all the purchasing for the Board of Ed?
Yeah, so my office, or me specifically, what will happen is the town uses a system called Munis, and so there's two distinct databases. There's one that handles all of the town processes, and there's items that go through the Board of Education. So I'm on the approval chain for the Board of Education purchases. So I go through approximately 5,000 requisitions that I'll receive from the Board of Education, and conversely, it's the same on the town side. Just coincidentally, they're the same. So they come through my office, specifically me, and then I will review the requisitions and make sure that the Board of Education is in compliance with the town's existing procurement guidelines. And if I have questions with them or if issues that pop up, as was mentioned earlier, I will converse with Tom Bremer, and him and I go through them to validate items. So if there's an issue, we'll address them.
And so do you and for like major projects, do you do analysis for them as well, sort of a little like in depth, or is it mainly just checking the pricing for what is requested? So my office will do, we have we call a bid log. So my office tracks projects that we do. So what will happen is we put out to bid services for the schools, and we also put out projects for the towns. So depending on the project, yeah, my office would get involved with assisting them in terms of vetting out different suppliers and different processes or services. And what I've been doing as time is progressing, what I'm trying to do is basically, I wouldn't say necessarily modernize, but I'm trying to get both town and the Board of Education to look at more and more of their services to see what items we can actually put out to bid. We've got two that we're actually working on with them now, which haven't been done in years. One is occupational therapy and physical therapy. We put out an RFP for those. That was one set of services. And we also put out an RFP for speech and language therapy. So what we're doing is right now we're evaluating those. But on an average, like I said, we're doing about 120 a year, and it's almost, again, equally split in terms of the bids that we'll do for the Board of Education and the bids that we do for the town. Thank you. That's very helpful. And for things like occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, language therapy, I would assume that sometimes you might put things out to bid, but it's not purely based on price, and then you would hopefully take the advice on whether or not the service level or the convenience level or something like that. Like for what comes to mind is sort of like if physical therapy, if the low bid is like an hour away versus, you know, half an hour, you know, not, you know, other factors. I would assume you work with the Board of Ed to make sure that that they're appropriate, right?
Right. So what we do, those are what we classify those as a professional service. So what it is the submissions as they come into the town. We evaluate those on their qualifications, and then pricing is it's weighted, but it's not given nearly as much weight as the qualifications of the firm. So it's a qualification-based selection. Your traditional bidding, as most people understand, what you're doing is you're taking the low bid, but we don't really bid the items I talked about. We're doing those as a professional service. So what we're doing is we're utilizing a qualification-based selection so that the town is getting quality providers but at a favorable price.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Foley? I don't think so. Thank you very much for coming tonight, Mr. Foley.
Thank you very much for having me. Have a good night, everybody. Good night now. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Next is the tax assessor, which is item 3050, and that's on page 148. Mr. Murray? Ross? I see Ross. I think you're muted.
How's that?
Yep, that works.
Okay.
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good, thank you.
Good.
Just a couple of highlights on the budget this year. For fees and professional services are down this year because the revaluation is complete. Not down as far as it could be because we've added a bit to the appeal cost with the anticipation that the appeals to Superior Court will be up this year. So that amount has been increased to cover that. Other than that, things are pretty much the same, you know.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Murray? Representative Gerber.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, anyone can jump in front of me if they want to. But Mr. Murray, Bill Gerber, District 2. If you don't mind, I want to ask a little bit about the appraised values increasing. Thank you so much for sending the breakdown, the preliminary breakdown between the different classes. And I was just curious, it looks like commercial is up like an enormous amount, like 20%. Industrial's up something like 30% as of now. Can you just give us a high level, and also the, it looked like the exempt properties were up a tremendous amount. I was just wondering if you can give us a high level overview on what you see without, giving too much away, maybe if they're still, in dispute, but like what's going on there?
Yeah, I think historically our exempts have been a bit undervalued. So the exempts are mostly, the two universities. That's the biggest chunk of our exempt. As far as commercial goes, despite COVID, we have seen those rises in several sectors. I don't have my list in front of me, but I know apartments have gone up, and assisted living did well, and on the flip side, the nursing homes did go down. So despite COVID, we've seen those increases. Industrial has done well even during COVID, warehousing, that sort of thing.
Okay. Okay. Oh, it's funny. I didn't really think of it. So the increase in the exempt is really just a market value increase, and of course it's exempt, so that's why it went up. That makes sense, right? Had those properties been market value, that's what the increase would be. Okay. The other question, the first select woman mentioned it briefly, that we have a surplus from the current fiscal year right now, as of a couple weeks ago, about 3.1 million, I think she said. But the last tax collection is going on right now, right, for the fiscal year during April.
Right, the last quarterly collection is April, but you may be thinking tax collector versus assessor.
Oh, sorry, you don't have that information. Okay. Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay.
No problem.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Representative Vergara, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Jill Vergara, District 7. Hi, Ross. I wanted to highlight that increase in the tax exempt properties. I know that I sent an email and everybody received it, and you're working on the answers, but I just wanted to highlight for the public, because it is a really big number for it to go up, is 30.5% in 1 year, which is $400 million. And I do think it would be really great to see the breakdown between the universities and all of our other tax exempt properties. I had also put through a research request through CCM about PA 490 and tax exemption status for private clubs. And I just wanted to get a sense of what other towns do, because I know that Westport eliminated this classification for its clubs several years back, as well as Easton. So I just didn't know what other towns did. And CCM came back saying there's no other town who classifies their clubs under PA 490 for tax exemption as open space or farmland. So I do think that it's something that we should really look into, because if no other town is doing it, I don't understand why Fairfield would be. And I was hopeful, because I know I've raised this several years in a row. I raised it with Mr. Tetro, and he wanted to wait until the revaluation. And I thought that that's what was going to occur. And I remember I checked in with you last year as well, but then the pandemic hit. So I just think, and the revaluation would have been the straightforward time to address this, but I do think that it's something that we really need to start looking into.
If I could jump in, Madam Moderator, I appreciate Representative Vergara's request to CCM, which I was copied on. I noticed, though, in the request, I don't believe he said not any town. He listed 4 or 5 towns that he contacted who said they were not listing their clubs under that designation. So I actually wrote him back and asked if he had the information on every town in the state of Connecticut, because he listed some towns that weren't even in Fairfield County. So I'm gonna, as soon as he writes me back with that information, but obviously this is something we can look more fully into, but the town of Fairfield has a long-standing, my understanding is that we designate them as open space property, and have since the beginning of time. So it is a discussion I believe we can have more fully, but I just wanted to clarify that, because I don't believe that CCM said no town. They listed in the answer to your request, I believe it was about 5 towns that weren't in Fairfield County.
The language I do admit that it wasn't an extensive list that he sent to us to verify what he was saying, but he did literally say in one of the sentences, I could not find any other town that classifies their clubs in this way.
Right, but he only listed 5, so that's why I asked for further clarification on what the status is of every town in the state of Connecticut.
It's a fair point because it really wasn't an extensive list.
Thank you.
Ross, I also had a question about the vacancies in your office. Do you have vacant positions in your office right now?
Yeah, I have 2 people that took the early retirement.
Okay, and so they haven't been replaced yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay, has that been posing a problem to you for the reval or for the tax relief applications?
We have, I have 2 temp part-timers helping us out, and that's relieved the strain that we had a little earlier on in February.
Okay, good. That's good to hear. And for the senior tax relief applications, are you able to help them in the same way that you normally do? I know it's so hard for in-person things, so how are new applicants reaching you?
Most people will come in. We haven't had much issue with that so far. And of course, the state has waived the reapplication requirement this year, so that's taken quite a bit of work out of the office for this spring. So it's really just people that are new or have had their income drop that are coming in.
Okay, and the senior center, are they still closed, so they're not doing any of this with you? Because sometimes they do open up their offices for this.
Well, we used to send a person over and a couple times a week to take applications there in conjunction with their doing tax returns for the elderly. We did not do that last year, and we're not planning on it for this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
And if I might just
before I
add that I want to, Madam Moderator, I want to also add that I want to publicly acknowledge that and thank Prue in the tax collector's office and Holly in the registrar's office who, when I asked if they would assist Mr. Murray during the appeal process with making sure all the appeals were received in a timely way and stamped and taken into, they stepped out of their offices for several days to assist. So kudos to those ladies for jumping in and helping out.
Thank you. We do have someone I'm going to call on in a second, but I just want to thank Representative Vergara for looking into the issue of the clubs being treated as open space. I think that's really important and needs to be investigated and considered. Seems like a lot of potential revenue for the town. So thank you for doing that. Representative Pistilli.
Sharon Pistilli, District 3. I have a question, but unfortunately, I don't know who I'm directing it to. And it's related to Representative Vergara's, research on the treatment of clubs as open space. If they're categorized as open space in the town, as townspeople, do we have access to their facilities or their land to use them? Does anybody know?
No, I don't believe the open space classification under PA 490 would grant the public access to it simply because of the classification.
Okay, but so they don't pay taxes, but the public doesn't have access to them.
They do pay taxes. It's a very reduced rate.
Right. It's like farmland property, right?
Yeah, very same statute, little different application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from Mr. Murray? I think we're all set. Thanks very much, Ross.
Yep, thank you. Good night.
Good night. Next, we have the Health Department. It's number 6010 on page 220. Mr. Cleary. And I do want to thank Mr. Cleary and his department so much. We all know how much they've been doing this year. We're very, very grateful. Are you here, Sands? Oh, Sands, if you're on the phone, you can dial *6 you may be muted. You'd have to dial *6. And to the public, we're having a lot of trouble with our WebEx tonight, so we're having a few technical issues. I don't know if Mr. Cleary is on at the moment.
There you go. I think.
Ah.
Sorry about that. I was
Sam?
trying to unmute, but it wasn't taking it. So let me just try one other thing here.
Okay.
But you can hear me now?
We do hear you. Yeah, we hear you now. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm
Yes.
having all sorts of issues. But so
I
just
know
to
everybody
go
is
into
tonight.
it, we have a very lean budget that we've presented this year with just a 0.04 increase, with mostly due to salary and just a minor increase in fuel costs. And that increase was we just plugged in the number of gallons we used last year into the formula provided by the finance department. That was the number that came out. But other than that, we're pretty much level in all the lines. So I will leave it at that and entertain any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Cleary? Representative Gerber?
Mr. Cleary, Bill Gerber, District 2. You and your group have done such an incredible job. I cannot express deeply enough my thanks to you. And I know there's been a lot of late nights between the fill pile and then having COVID-19 hit you in the face. But I was a little surprised to see that your budget wasn't increasing. And I guess just want to hear from you that you don't see any residual work related to all of what we're going through now, and especially, are we going to have additional, I assume, we don't really know yet how often we're going to have to vaccinate people. I assume that you may be picking up an annual COVID vaccination program as well. But anything that and anything else, I just want to hear from you that you don't see increased workload and need to add staff.
So we have experienced an increased workload amongst all my nearly all the staff. But we have also had some assistance, federal dollars coming down through the state to assist us with covering some overtime costs, with covering contact tracing costs, and we continue to be notified of additional funding. So we've taken advantage of every source of funding that has been offered to us. We were able to use $40,000 of crisis COVID funds from the state to cover overtime costs related to sector rule enforcement and contact tracing. We continue to struggle with contact tracing in terms of demands on the department. So we are looking to bring in additional contact tracers. That'll be funded through state funds.
Okay.
And so, again, long term, if we were to go through a COVID clinic, an annual COVID clinic, that currently we have annual flu clinics that we can submit for insurance, and so we have relationships with a number of insurance companies, and so that covers our costs for the flu clinics, and that will be the plan going forward if we were to have annual COVID clinics where we would just bill for insurance, and that would cover the costs.
Okay, because I have heard stories about people working both days on the weekend doing contact tracing. I assume contact tracing is going to continue. It's going to be an issue for a while. So the overtime, people can't work like that indefinitely, but you're saying even if you were to replace the overtime with more people, that should be covered by federal funds or state funds.
That's correct. Yeah, we are working. The weekends have been, especially since the schools have gone back in full time, all in full time. that's really picked up the demands on contact tracing. And so, and with the cases starting to increase now for the last few weeks, that's really been a challenge for us. And so we are looking at additional, staffing. Specifically, we're looking to bring in, we have contact tracers that work on weekends, but we simply just need more coverage. So we're
and I understand people are, and including parents, are not being cooperative with you, and that's just unbelievable to me. But thank you for at least making the effort.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority are, but again, it's there's pressures on people to, if they say I was exposed to X person, and then that person has to miss 14 days of school and the SATs and their sports competitions, and so there's pressures that go on that where people don't want to divulge other people. They don't want to be the one to do it, and so it presents just additional challenges to the contact tracing staff. For us to respond to.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you for your kind words.
Representative Vergara.
Thank you. Representative Gerber asked really the question that I was thinking of asking. But I did want to say, Sands, thank you so much for all of your work on everything over the pandemic. I mean, I know I've talked to you and you regularly work 20 hours a day. And I think that we owe you really a debt of gratitude. And like Bill was saying, I do feel like your department is overburdened, and it's good to hear that federal funds could be used to help you. And I think that the federal stimulus is also another pot that you need to be looking at. I mean, we're getting $27.7 million in federal stimulus, and the fact that you and your staff are working so hard, it makes me think that we really should be using some of that money to help unburden you. And I actually also have a question about your relationship with the universities and how much time your office has spent communicating with them and training their contact tracers. It's been a substantial amount of time, right, that you spend talking with them weekly, and you've trained all of their contact tracers?
Well, I wouldn't say that we've trained all their contact tracers. We've definitely assisted early on. So last spring, and with the rollout of the Connecticut's contact tracing system, the contact system, we offered our assistance with getting some of them up to speed, some of the leadership up to speed when they requested. But I wouldn't say we've trained them all. We've offered it. We've had them take advantage of that. We've actually sent staff there during heightened activity to assist them. But they've really are self-sufficient now. And while we had through the spring and over the summer and through the fall, sort of regular meetings and contact with them. This semester that's hasn't been as significant. As, they are doing a lot more testing and so we haven't been quite as in frequent contact. I probably talk with them, once a week or so, just to see how they're doing and if there are any issues that we can be of assistance. Right now, we're in conversation with FairTV about. Since we are a COVID vaccine provider, how we can assist when the vaccine becomes available to, specifically where this data will allow vaccine providers to specifically target college-age students, how we can be of assistance to them. So we're working through that right now. But right now, that's not, we can't do that right at this time.
Okay, that would be great to assist the colleges in that way. My mind does go to the economics of it and the money that we're spending on assisting the universities. So I know other towns, college towns, charge health and safety user fees. I don't know if we've contemplated that through our emergency management team, but is that something that you've discussed? I know that Hamden does that.
I've never heard the concept of health and safety user fees. I mean, we have in instances in the past where the university is doing building projects where it requires CO inspections towards the end of those projects on the weekends. You know, we will often ask them, request them to pay overtime costs related to that. That's happened in the past, but in terms of at this point, we haven't considered, you know, charging the university for our services, for our assistance.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks again so much for everything that you do for us.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Cleary? I don't think there are. Thank you very much, Mr. Cleary, for being here and for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thank you for your kind words.
Sure. Good night.
Good night.
Our next item is Human and Social Services, which is item 6050 on page 224. Ms. DeMarco and Ms. Steele, are you here?
I am. Can you hear okay?
Yes. Hi. How are you?
Good.
Hi.
Great. Thanks. It's Julie. Before we jump into the budget, I just wanted to introduce Brenda Steele, our new Senior Center Director. Brenda started in January, and her first and major job so far has been to run the COVID call center for the town, coordinating with the health department and with social services and transportation to help people get their vaccine appointments, to help coordinate the homebound senior and disabled program getting homebound seniors vaccines. And she's just doing a really great job. And I wanted to make sure that you can't see her, but that you knew she was here and that she is a huge asset to our department.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for doing that. That's great, and welcome to the department.
Thank you so much. So you'll see our budget is pretty quiet. It's, you know, we're down a little bit for postage and advertising and Social Security and for fuel. You know, there's not much of a story to tell this year. It's been pretty quiet, and we didn't ask for very much, but I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for either Ms. DeMarco or Ms. Steele? Representative Vergara, did you raise your hand? Yes.
I did. I wasn't sure if you could see me. Thank you. Jill Vergara, District 7. Brenda, it's nice to meet you. It's so great to have you working for the town. I've already heard great things, and I think it was a really necessary role to fill, but they clearly found someone really great to do it. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I was wondering why a request wasn't made for full-time for the Senior Center Director, because I know that it was in the budget last year and it was cut down to part-time because of our economic circumstances. But it is something that the community has asked for several years. I know Fairfield Senior Advocates, it's a very important issue for them, and it has been for several years. So I was wondering why it wasn't in the department request.
Oh, I'd be happy to explain that. In creating the budget, I did put it in there. This is a strange year, and if there's going to be a year to not increase staff to full-time, this would be the one. While Brenda is doing amazing work and doing above and beyond, it's something that we can manage right now. The Senior Center is not open at this point. We're running programs via Zoom. And we have some time. When seniors are there, we will need Brenda full-time, 100%. But this is a year that we can wait on that. And I appreciated having a conversation with the first select woman, and working through that. And I agree, this is just not the year for it. We will need this position full-time, and I'll be back next year, and I'll be very loud about it because hopefully the seniors will be there. But they're not right now. And with any luck, they'll be here, you know, on some kind of limited, measured, and slow reopening basis this summer and the fall. But it's just not right now.
That makes sense. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Moderator,
other questions?
Madam Moderator, this is Cindy
Yes.
Parham from District 2. I have a question.
Oh, hi, Cindy.
Hi, Julie. Are any of the vans that we had just recently passed the budget for the increase, are any of them like hybrid or electric?
No, they're not. We just were awarded another grant for a bus that you approved that we will get in 2 years. We haven't done the actual purchase of that bus yet, but when we put in for it, we put in for an average amount. So when it's time to go actually shopping for that bus, we can look at that. We get very basic transportation. The transportation is just to and from the center. So we don't. It's not that it's not important. It certainly is, but we just haven't done that in the past. And we will definitely be looking at it. And if it fits within the allotment that we got for the grant, that 80%, with our 20%, hopefully we can do something a little bit more creative.
Oh, great. I did notice, too, you have charging stations right there in your parking lot.
We do.
Is that correct?
We do. And we have we have right under the new solar panels. We do.
I've also heard from one of my constituents that some of the new Prime vans that deliver can be retrofitted to become handicap accessible. So maybe that's something that, like, Public Health and Safety can assist you with doing research regarding, so that if I'm not sure how much money Bigelow donates, or when they donated the money to have the center named after their company, but is that something that they might even want to have a van that's like a Bigelow van that takes seniors to appointments? Is that something that we've ever broached?
Not really. There's a couple things I just want to clarify with that. Those are great questions. When we apply for the grants, we apply for a certain size bus. So we are replacing an old 12-seater with a new 12-seater, and those are buses we need at the very minimum that carry two wheelchair passengers with a lift. So we're not applying for a different size. We're applying to replace one that's already existing. So at some point it would probably behoove us to apply for a smaller van. As seniors, there's not going to be probably as many seniors taking the bus as they age, because there'll be other transportation options. So what I'm hoping is, going forward with other grants, we could apply for something, like an Amazon size van. I know Easton has one of those for their senior center. When the senior center name change happened, that was more in honor of the Bigelow family's contributions to the whole community. So they don't, we do get generous donations from them, but it's not, it covers our part of our lunch program for those vulnerable seniors rather than for the bus. I mean, we've never approached them about it. It's an interesting idea, but we haven't needed to either.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Sure.
Representative Wolk.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Jay Wolk, District 5. Hey, Julie. Thanks for everything you're doing for our seniors in town. I have a question about maintenance. So I'm looking at the budget book, and I see that your maintenance went up a little bit. How's the buildings doing? Roofs and that kind of things. Do you need more money, or is it you guys have enough and the buildings are sound? And I know you guys are off by the off by the water behind you guys, and so I'm wondering if you get things like that.
We had our roof replaced a couple of years ago. So there's no leaks or anything. We've been lucky while the seniors are out that we've been able to update some of the rooms and the furniture and fixing some doors while they're not there, which is a gift because it's hard to get that kind of stuff done. We got gym floors redone and things. But in terms of the building maintenance, it's a former school, so it still looks like a former school, but it's in great shape. We did get approved in the non-recurring capital last year, that the bond issue, some design money to look at the kitchen and the areas and the HVAC system, maybe the windows. I can't remember what the third thing is. It might have been windows, but that's something that we're working towards, and then we'll go from there what those studies find, in terms of if there's any asbestos remediation. But we're in the process of looking at that. The building's in pretty decent shape. Bathrooms, that was the other thing, Jay. Sorry about that. So we have to update our bathrooms so they're handicapped accessible, and they're we can do a much better job with that. But I don't feel like we're in trouble with that. I feel like we have a great plan going forward to address some of those needs.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
Point of order, Madam Moderator. This is Representative McCormick from District 2. We are, I believe, almost 2 full hours into this meeting, and I believe we're only through 9 of 21 items. And while some of these questions appear to be certainly very relevant and germane to the passing of the budget and listening to the department heads explain how they came up with their numbers, I would just like to be mindful of the time as if we continue to go at this pace, we will certainly be here long past midnight.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Did someone else say something? So I guess we'll all have to just be aware of that. I think it's a good opportunity for us to ask questions, but we do have a lot on our plate. So thank you for that reminder. Thank you very much to Ms. DeMarco and Ms. Steele. I don't see anyone else with a question, so thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item is Public Works Administration, which is number 5011 on page 198. Mr. Marsilio?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
I can hear you. Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I've been victimized by this glitch this evening in the WebEx.
Yeah, it's been a pain for everybody. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I've been on the phone with our IT director, and so he's directed me to report in by phone. I actually have on my screen the fact that you've been notified that I'm in the queue here, but do you see anything there?
I see. No, and I'm not controlling the entry of people. So, yeah, IT does that for me. So I'm sorry that you're. I know everyone's having trouble. It's been a bad night with WebEx.
Okay. So should I begin?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So the three main budgets under Public Works are administration, operations, and solid waste and recycling. And we've identified a number of synergies and a number of savings in those three budgets. If you look at the administration budget on page 198, you will see that there is a slight increase in the regular payroll. That's reflective of a new finance and capital position in that administration operation. There is a decrease in the operations budget in the salary accounts for some reorganization. And there's been a decrease in the solid waste and recycling budget for reorganization efforts and planning there. For the most part, overall, those three budgets are pretty much status quo or less than last year's. I think everyone attending this evening understands what Public Works does. It's pretty clear what the efforts were this past winter, snow, and what we'll be facing this year with remediation efforts and capital efforts and the like. So I'm happy to answer any questions about those three budgets.
Thank you. Representative Gerber.
Yeah, hi, Bill Gerber, District 2, thank you. Can you just give us a high-level overview of where your department stands in terms of implementing the DPW audit recommended requirements for the department? I guess yeah, I'll just let you speak to that. Thanks.
Well, so we've done an in-depth evaluation of the audit. We've adopted a number of quick fixes, some of this low-hanging fruit. Now there's some more few items that rely on this budget to be adopted. And we have plans in place to address many of the issues that audit highlighted. The capital individual in the operating budget is intended to tighten up all the controls of all of the cash and all of the billing and budgets that Public Works deals with. And we plan to automate a number of issues. Will be part of the internal business processes that are in the pipeline from IT, and we'll be adopting whatever we think we can use that will make us more efficient.
Well, other than the person that you're putting on your budget's down in total, so I guess implementing the DPW suggestions isn't costing anything, right?
No. We'll be using credit cards at the transfer stations, and we'll have credit cards in the Public Works office for permitting, and then there'll be remote permitting or over the internet permitting and that. So yeah, I think I'm not certain after post-COVID what the business as usual will look like, but we'll be ready to address that as it unfolds. But right now, I think we have a good plan, and we're ready for that.
But who is actually implementing? You know, who's working on implementing the suggestions? Don't you need personnel for that?
Well, actually, it's higher than just personnel. We have a few key people that we've added to the budget, and we have another 4 or 5 individuals that we just felt were no longer part of the required. So that's why the decrease in the budgets. But if you look, and I don't know how long you want me to talk about the audit, but it's really a higher level issue. It deals with the IT department, finance department, DPW administration, and HR. So we have to collaborate on each one, on certain of those issues to drive in solutions, and that's what we're in the middle of now, among other things.
If I could just jump in, Madam Moderator, Bill, this is obviously a big subject, and I know you have a very long agenda that's regarding the budget, but like as Bucky said, there's a ton of departments involved in this. We put new purchasing policy on the block that's being vetted and going to be voted on by the Board of Finance. And as Bucky said, there's a lot of departments intertwined in the audit, and we did take care of quite a few of them, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take some time for us to get to it, but I can guarantee you that I intend to make sure we handle all of it.
Do you intend to sort of have the major ones handled this fiscal year?
Well, we've already handled quite a few. I don't know if I gave a full presentation on this early in the year about the ones that we worked on. But in an effort for the RTM to get through their agenda, I'm always happy to talk to you offline about this if you'd like to call.
Sure, I can actually check out the presentation that you gave. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Vergara.
Are we going over all of the subsets of Public Works right now, or are we just on 5011, 5030, and I don't want to jump ahead.
6070.
Oh, and 50, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'll hold my question.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Marsilio? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
No, sorry. Sorry, this was for Mr. Marsilio, though, for solid waste and recycling.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the things he addressed. So
Is that
go ahead.
pertinent? Okay, I'm sorry. So I just have a question about this because I'm just confused about solid waste and recycling and how Mike Zambrewski was a director, right? I mean, we have there's a town code requirement that sets out all the requirements for the Solid Waste and Recycling Commission and the Solid Waste and Recycling Department. It's Chapter 84, Article 2. And it requires that there be a director of solid waste and recycling. Like the language says, there shall be a director of solid waste and recycling appointed for an indefinite term by the Board of Selectmen. So I just don't understand how we're eliminating this position based on the fact that the language of our town code requires us to have one.
Well, I guess the best answer for that would be that you could call me the director of solid waste and recycling because I've assumed all those duties.
But the same ordinance says a separate department is desirable, proper, and necessary to discharge the obligations of the town to be in conformance with such state mandated laws. So it's clearly saying that there needs to be a separate department called Solid Waste and Recycling that has its own director.
Okay,
and it's related to our town code and state law. I just don't understand.
Well, I don't know that that's a state law.
Vergara, my understanding is that we do have a solid waste and recycling department. They're all intertwined with the Department of Public Works. We are dissipating this position into other positions, and it is being handled by the Department of Public Works and the Solid Waste and Recycling Department, which all falls under the umbrella of the Department of Public Works. But if you have a question regarding the town code, I would ask that you defer that to the town attorney.
Okay, yeah, I'm concerned about this because I do want you to be able to reorganize, and I think like I'm very interested in save cost efficiencies and finding efficiencies, but I just want to make sure we're following the law. And if our code requires us to have a director, then we have to fix that first before you can eliminate a position.
Mr. Marsilio, before you leave, I don't know whether you're going to be addressing building department or the first select woman. Both of your names are on that. Do you know? Or would you like to address that? Or
I can address it. What page is that on?
Okay. It's page 209.
Okay, there are two parts to the building department budget. One obviously is the operations piece and the other is the revenue piece. All I can say about the operations side is that there is just a small increase that is and that is in the salary portion of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only major difference. You have the floater, which is divided between building and or another floater that's been added to the budget, and that's it.
Okay. Any questions on the building?
I'll just add that, as I spoke earlier, we are having a new building official come on board, and we are down one inspector, which the position has been posted, and hopefully our new inspector will be able to interview candidates and we'll be able to get that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions
I just
on the
want to
building
add,
budget?
I'm sorry. We also, I'm sorry, we added $15,000 into the blight, $5,000 into a blight account. If you recall, Mr. Conley used to speak a lot about, you know, residents in our town who are low income or having issues and sometimes get called on from neighbors about a broken window or a loose gutter or whatever it might be, and that they're elderly and they can't do it. So he's been asking for years for this, so we put together this small account so that we can assist those residents who need that small little bit of help. And they're not really blight, just can't do it or can't afford it. So that's the only real big changes in the budget. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this building budget? Doesn't look like there are. So thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Marsilio.
You're very welcome. Have a good evening.
You too. So the next item is engineering, which is 5070 on page 214. Mr. Hurley,
Hi, Karen.
here?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you?
Okay, great. I know with the phones, same problem that John had as well. Good evening, RTM members. Basically, engineering is presenting last year's budget as very similar to, this year's budget is similar to last year's budget, with the exception of fuel and software price increases. They were high in percentage, but relatively small amount increases, resulting in a 0.64% increase. That does include a capital request for a replacement van to replace the 2003 Caravan that was taken out of service due to safety reasons. The van had a cracked frame. So other than that, as I said, we pretty much matched last year's, and I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Hurley? Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. Thanks for being here tonight. I know you're incredibly busy, Bill, and your department does so much work for the town. So I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just wanted to see what the difference is between a CAD specialist and a senior civil engineer.
The CAD specialist is someone who specializes in the computer CAD program, and the senior civil engineer is one that has experience in CAD and in engineering. We have a couple of different possibilities for the senior civil engineer. It may involve construction engineering. It may involve a professional engineer's degree, or if we were to get a younger candidate, they'd be like an engineer in training with a college degree and be able to advance in the next, say, couple of years, if you know what I mean.
Thank you. Yes, that's really helpful. I now understand that it's that the senior civil engineer can do everything that a CAD specialist can do.
In most cases, there are some that, there are a couple of cases where it might be a little bit different, they have a specialized, knowledge also in GIS and in AutoCAD, but those things, as time goes on, the candidates would possess that as well.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. And in your intro on page 213, you mentioned private consultants contracts in one of the bullet points, seeking grant money and designing, assisting, and authoring requests and proposals for private consultants contracts. What's that?
Well, that would be in the case of like the local bridge program, a lot of times when we get the grants, the amount of paperwork and the level of design is well beyond our capabilities to do certain bridges, you know, in-house. And so therefore we would hire a consultant to design that project. And the same with the larger grants.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Karen, you on mute?
Representative Gerber. Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry.
Hey, Bill Gerber, District 2. How prepared are you, and do you have the personnel, do you have the resources to compile every single project that we could possibly put in for a Build Back Better infrastructure, assuming it's going to pass Congress? And are we ready to get as much money as we possibly can?
We are, John Marsilio and myself have been developing a list with the cooperation of, the finance department for some of our current projects. And then as far as some of the existing projects, future projects, we keep an eye on any potential grants. And Mr. Marsilio had mentioned that there were a couple of people that they plan on hiring, that one of them may have that capability. And I know the first select woman was also talking about having, I believe it was I don't want to speak for her, but I believe it was a part-time grant position as well, grant writer position as well.
Because if these things need to be relatively shovel ready, we would need to have things lined up, and it's going to take resources, right? Like there's been some pie in the sky things you've been looking at for years, including Black Rock Turnpike, and there's probably nothing too crazy that you shouldn't be considering, right?
Yeah, that's correct. As more of the details come in for those type of grants, and as the question before you by Jill, she had mentioned that with the consulting engineers, the MetroCog is putting out a request for proposal for various consulting engineers in different fields, whether it be traffic engineering, structural engineering, civil engineering. And so we plan on piggybacking on that, and maybe even putting out a couple of additional ones ourselves, where we would have that assistance of getting these projects done, especially if there's a time limit on them.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Hurley? Looks like there are not. Thanks very much, Bill, for coming tonight.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye. Next item is WPCA, which is on page 291, item 130. Mr. Norton, are you on?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yes. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. Thank you. The WPCA budget this year is a relatively flat budget. We have a couple minor increases in some line items and a larger decrease in our capital outlay. We bought a large number of collection systems for our primary tanks last year, so that was a $170,000 decrease in that line item. So that goes to the relatively flat budget that we have before you. With that, I'll just ask if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Norton? Representative Vergara.
Hi, I'm Jill Vergara, District 7. Have you started talking with the administration at all about the federal stimulus? Because I've read some of the language and it seems pretty specifically and explicitly open to sewer improvements and a lot of different improvements and even maybe capital improvements. So I'm wondering whether you've started those discussions.
Yes, that's a great question. We have, First Selectwoman Kupchak asked me to talk to Mark Bernhardt to look at some of our projects, and piggybacking on what Bill Hurley said, we have some shovel-ready projects that are ready to go. The East Trunk Line, which is a large project, is ready to go. It's been designed. We're waiting to see about funding, and this would be a perfect project for that. Also, the Metro North wetlands crossing, we just awarded that to D&B engineers for design. That should be 3 to 6 month design, then would be relatively short to be shovel ready too. So we have several projects that would be shovel ready and hopefully would be eligible for these programs once they become available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from Mr. Norton? I think we're all set. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much and good night.
Thanks. Good night. Now we'll turn to the nonprofit organizations, and the first one is Pequot Library, which is on page 108. It's number 2130. Is Ms. Coakley here?
Hi, good evening. Stephanie Coakley with Pequot Library.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. It's good to be here with you all. Thank you for inviting us.
Sure. Would you like to discuss your budget?
Absolutely. As always, we thank you for, again, inviting us to present at this evening's RTM meeting, and we're incredibly grateful more than ever for our partnership with the town to provide a full-service rare books research library free of charge to all residents, and we've probably been doing so since 1894, and we've been partnering with the town since 1923, and this year is a special year with the one-time request of much-needed capital support, and this is a direct result of a private resident's wish to see that their generous donation be matched with town support. And so I'm, of course, happy to answer any questions that might come up. And thank you again for everything that you do for us to be able to provide not one or two, but 3 libraries to town residents. So thank you.
Yeah, we're lucky. Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Coakley? I don't think there are. Everyone just knows they love the library. Oh,
I have a question. Yeah. Oh, hi. Thank you. So the total cost of the roof is $100,000?
$1.5 million. It's a complete comprehensive replacement of all of the roofing systems involved with the historic red tile portion of our building.
Yeah, I figured when you said the match of 50,000, I wasn't sure what you were talking. So it's a match of a $50,000, which is part of a $1.5 million project, and the roof is currently leaking, or just
It's been leaking for a long time. It's overdue in that it's needed to have this extensive repair, and hopefully this is the only time we're doing so in the next generation. It's getting done extremely thoroughly, I can assure you, and I hope you all have some time to stop by and take a look. It's quite a construction project right now.
But the rest of the 1.5 million was raised from private donors?
Mostly private donors. We've also benefited from a combination of other support, including the Neighborhood Assistance Act, which is a tax benefit to state businesses. And we've also benefited from foundation support at the local level, but primarily the generosity of approximately 100 or so donors.
Okay, thank you. And the 350 operating support from the town, what percentage of your operating budget is that again?
That's right around 20% of our general operating budget. We're raising the rest in a variety of means.
Right.
Fundraisers, you name it.
Yep. Yeah. I just and you're not using your endowment at all this year, are you? Or are you using it for the operating budget? Right.
Oh,
You're
yes,
using earnings, but
absolutely.
you're not going into the capital, right?
Correct.
So you use the earnings for on the endowment for your operating budget.
Yes, and we have not met our $1.5 million goal for the roof project by any means, and so the Board of Trustees Finance Committee is looking at options as to how we might close that gap. We're awfully close, and we are certainly grateful for the town's consideration of helping us trigger this $100,000 challenge to the town.
Okay, and just last question, were you able to get a PPP loan this year?
Yes,
okay.
Last year we're, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Representative Vergara.
Hi, Jill Vergara, District 7. This is more of a question, I think, for Brenda, for the First Select Woman, because it's sort of like, for me, the elephant in the room right now is the federal stimulus. And I have tried, I've read it, and I've gotten some input from other people from other towns, and it seems pretty clearly explicitly open for nonprofits. And it is limited language, but of the limited language, it seems very specifically okay to give it to nonprofits for almost any reason. And especially if the nonprofits are listing declined revenues or some economic impacts from COVID, that especially makes it viable for the federal stimulus. So I think it's very worthwhile to give to our nonprofits, but I have reservations increasing the amounts that we give in this year, where we're getting a lot of federal stimulus that we could be using that rather than putting it into our operating expenses. So Brenda, have you discussed this at all?
Absolutely, Jill. Working a lot on this issue. As leader of the town, this is my job to pay attention to this and work on it every single day. I've been working hand in hand with Congressman Himes, and no one has any information about how we can use this money, and will not have information about how we can use this money until approximately mid to late May, is what we've been told. Some of the cursory information is that it could be used on infrastructure projects, shovel-ready projects, because the timeline, we do know, is within a 2-year period. So you have to use the money within the 2-year period. So 25 million, split up between 2 years. We are working to put together a list. We have been meeting with engineering, meeting with looking at all of our bonded lists, looking at everything. And I have not heard yet that I could give any money to a nonprofit. I have not been communicated that by the congressional offices. They have said that it could be used for infrastructure projects, and that's what we are gathering together. As you know, we have a tremendous amount of infrastructure projects, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars of infrastructure projects. I mean, it would really assist us taking some of the money off our debt service, obviously, off our bonds, and even some things that we haven't yet put on those items. So that's primarily what we're looking at. I've been told that we should not try to expect to use it for any operating costs, and that's why we didn't even try to do that. I believe it would have been incredibly irresponsible to try to do that, especially since we were not going to have the details until after the RTM votes on the budget. As far as Pequot's, I mean, the operating costs aside, the town has always supported Pequot in the operating budget because most people view, as I view, is that as they are a third library in our town, that our entire town is available to use for a fraction of the cost of our other libraries. And this $50,000 is a unique situation that Stephanie came to me and talked to me about, that a donor or a benefactor in our town was willing to give $100,000 toward the roof project if the town of Fairfield would match that money. Now that's very unique. I've never heard of this before. And so I thought long and hard about it, talked about it with my administration, and said to Stephanie, I'd be willing to bring that before the town boards because I think it's unique. And it is a valuable asset to our community, not only for the value of what's inside the library, but how it aesthetically looks for our community. So I said, I don't want to say yay or nay because I want the whole town to be involved. And so far, the Board of Selectmen has agreed, as has the Board of Finance, that we would split it up in this manner to step up in this unique capacity, in this unique offer. So as far as the nonprofits go, Jill, I have, again, I'm, the leader of the town, and I'm speaking to the congressional delegation and working on this. So I have not been told I can use that money in that way, but doesn't mean that if, in fact, when we do get more clarification from the Treasury Department, because they're actually writing what the criteria is right now. I literally just got an email from Congressman Hines' office just a couple of days ago telling me just that. If there is opportunity for us to give some money to our nonprofits, I think after the budget passes and we have that information, that we should consider doing that. I'm hoping to put all the lists together, our infrastructure projects, a whole host of items that we've been working on, meeting the criteria of the 2 years, and to put it in a priority list of what I believe and my administration believes are priorities, and then share them with the town boards and get the feedback from the Board of Finance and the RTM. I'd like this to be a community effort. And if we could then, if that in fact is part of it, the nonprofits can get something, well, I think we should then think about giving them some additional money because I know they've all had a difficult year.
Yeah, I mean, I know, and I really support Pequot too, and both my kids have attended programs there, and I do think that it's a really important resource and asset for our town, as are all of the nonprofits listed in the budget. But I do think it's still a hard year for everyone, with the taxpayers included. And if there's any way that we can support the nonprofits without putting it onto the taxpayer, I would prefer to do that. And I understand you're working on it, but I have read the enabling language, and it does specifically say nonprofits. So and we're voting in May, so maybe if we can get more information by the time we vote, and we can figure out a way to create some kind of trust for the nonprofits to ensure that they get the money, that they would have these increases in the budget, then I would prefer to do it that way. But so that's just how I feel about it, and I wanted to put it out on the table.
I agree, Jill, but again, I don't know what enabling legislation you're looking at. I mean, you might be looking at the bill they passed, but they've been very clear that Treasury is writing the criteria for the states and then subsequently the towns on how we can use the money. And that is not out yet. And so they determine it. And if you look at the total cost of what we're giving to the nonprofits, I mean, that would barely move the needle on the tax rate. I mean, barely. This is not a huge amount of money. I mean, we'd have to be giving these nonprofits millions of dollars for it to have any immeasurable impact on the tax rate.
But it moves the baseline. It moves the baseline for every budget year, and that's an issue for me. So I think that nonprofits need more help at this time, just like everybody needs more help. But I have an issue with including it in our operating budget right now and moving that baseline for us.
Well, the only difference in the operating budget this year is the $50,000 for the roof, and that is what the Board of Finance, it's their purview is finance, wanted to include it there. So
point of order,
that's
Madam Moderator. Are these questions for the Pequot Library director?
I don't know. I think
believe
at this point, they
Vergara asked me about it, Representative.
I appreciate that, but as we all know, there are a lot of things on the docket, and it seems to be that things are repeating. And I have a question for the director.
I think I would agree just that this, I think we understand what each of you are saying, and you're both coming from a very good place, and we're all going to wait for more information and, the opportunity to use these funds. So I think if it's okay, I will move on to Representative Georgiadis. Drew, you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Stephanie, thank you very much for coming tonight. I appreciate the cost of the roof, being familiar with First Church, who has the same architect, same red slate roof. It's incredibly expensive. I wanted to share with you, I was on a Facebook Live with Congressman Himes. I suggest you look into the Shuttered Venue Grant. As we all know, Pequot is a great resource to the town, and you guys do a lot of fantastic events which have been shuttered. So I suggest that maybe that can help you out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's great. I think we don't have any other questions for you, Stephanie, so thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you again. Have a good night.
You too. Next is the Audubon Society, item 2210 on page 115. Joyce, are you here?
I am, thank you.
Hi, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us here this evening. Connecticut Audubon, as you might know, is a 123-year-old organization that's headquartered in Fairfield, Connecticut. In the past, your support last year in particular has really helped us to provide support for students within the town of Fairfield. We transitioned our programs to virtual programs, supported school teachers with providing science education in virtual settings, provided students with hands-on kits that they could use to do their hands-on research in the field, either in parks or their backyard or their schoolyards. We provided after-school programming in small group sessions for students, free of charge for all residents of the town of Fairfield, and then special programs for school closures, for school break periods. We continue to do our very popular community-based programming, Enchanted Forest, and we added a new event called Winter Wonderland, which was very, very popular. Again, small group sessions, we were very mindful of the CDC regulations, but it was really the opportunity to get children and adults outdoors. We kept our trails open throughout the pandemic, despite the fact that hurricanes hit and we had a series of terrible windstorms. So we had volunteers and staff and team members out there making sure that the trees were not on the trails and they were available, because our trail usage increased dramatically over the past year. We are asking for your support again in the next budget year. That support would provide programs at no cost, again, to the town of Fairfield residents. That'll include programming for 625 kindergarten through 5th grade students, science-based programs, which we'll provide virtually until we are allowed to do in-person programming again, at which point we would invite those students to come with their classes to our center to experience hands-on nature. We'll continue our community-based programs, again, Enchanted Forest, the Wonderland, which was new, and our popular egg hunt. We are holding our summer camp in person this year, and we're very happy about that. We went virtual last year. We are, again, running our summer camp at about 2/3 capacity to ensure that we're meeting all CDC requirements. We appreciate that we're able to provide this service for the residents of the town of Fairfield. We felt very welcome here for the past 100+ years, and we really do want to have the opportunity to be able to support teachers and students as they deal with these very difficult times, and ensure that students have the opportunity to have that hands-on science opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions regarding Audubon Society? I don't think there are, but thank you for joining us tonight and telling us about that.
But there might be a question.
Oh, there is now, yes. Representative Vergara.
Hi. My son actually came back today from school. He goes to Holland Hill, and he said, "Guess what, Mom? I went on a field trip." And I said, "What? What are you talking about?" And he said, "I went to the Audubon." And so he did the program today, and he really enjoyed it. And I see how it enriches our kids. I've seen it throughout the years, and we did the summer camps too. So I really think that you add service to the town that we need. But I just did want to be open about how I'm feeling towards the budget right now. And it's a universal thing for any of the nonprofits receiving an increase this year. I'm hesitant to be supportive of those increases if there's any way that we can use the federal stimulus money to give to you instead. So I just wanted to give you that heads up and say thank you for what you do for the town. It's no reflection on how I feel about Audubon. It really is just that I don't see this as a year to be increasing for our nonprofits.
We understand that.
Any other questions? I think not. So thank you very much again for coming tonight.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Okay. You too. Next is the Fairfield Museum and History Center, which is 2250 on page 119. Mr. Jelly, are you here?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you all tonight? Thank you for your time through this evening. And in the sake of the long agenda tonight, I'll try to be very brief and then answer any questions anybody has. I think many of you are familiar with the Fairfield Museum. We've been in central part of this community for 118 years. We preserve almost 400 years of Fairfield's history. And we do school programs for about 4,500 students. Obviously, this past year has moved that online, but we've been very fortunate, like the Audubon has, to receive outside funding and invest a significant amount of money in building an online education platform, which will be rolling out in just a matter of weeks, which all Fairfield 3rd and 5th grade, as well as their teachers, will be using in lieu of their field trips this spring. So we, like all the nonprofits here, have worked hard to shift gears and to continue to serve the community in the best way possible. In 2019, the Fairfield Museum welcomed about 35,000 visitors to the museum, which represent a very significant influx of visitors and their related economic activity for our town. So we see ourselves very much a part of the driver of not only the cultural enrichment of Fairfield, but also the growing economy and the growing tourism economy. And we're very fortunate to be able to work with Mark Barnhart and the Economic Development Office on ways in which we all collectively as nonprofits can help grow the valuation of the property here and the economic, related economic benefits. As with a lot of nonprofits, we are continuing to shift gears into this year. We are reopened. We are welcoming visitors back into the museum, and they are slowly trickling in. We will, through this school year, continue to be virtual with our school programs, but we're hoping to welcome students back next fall and spring when we typically see, as I said, about 4,500 students. We do serve all Fairfield elementary schools. We have programs for all 3rd and 5th grades, as well as a number of other middle school and high school grades as well. So the town funding that the town so generously provides us every year is about 4% of our operating budget, but it gives me a very, very important tool to go out and to raise outside funding of about $750,000 to $800,000 a year, which goes to underwrite a lot of the free programming for the community. We were fortunate to work with the town last year to be able to present our Jazz Fridays and other free community programs last summer, and we'll be doing the same again this year. So we use this money in every way possible to provide free community programming, much of which both entertains and encourages, we think, deeper civic participation. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to just be quick because I know you all have a lot of agenda tonight.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jelly? I think not.
I have a question.
Great.
Oh, who's that?
Hannah.
Sorry,
Hello?
who's that? Yeah.
Hannah Gale.
Can you just, Hannah? Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Yes, I just, my question to, I'm sorry, I forget his name, but the museum director. I remember hearing in previous years you're saying something about the importance of this small amount of support from the town and that it is helpful to you with your fundraising as a demonstration of the support that you get from the town. Could you speak to this?
I'd be happy to. As I said,
I think we might have lost your audio. Mike, are you still there? You're on mute now.
Am I back?
You're back, yes, thank you.
Oh, good. Sorry about that. I shifted my seat. I must have touched something. As I was saying, the town support represents a small part of our operating budget, and we raise the vast majority from very generous citizens here in the community. But it is a very important tool that demonstrates broad community support for the work that we do, and it gives me a great message to bring to private donors that the community, the town recognizes our value, recognizes the things that we contribute to the community, and therefore is kind of worthy of that private investment that we seek. So it's a very important demonstration that allows us to raise the vast majority of our budget through private support to provide the programs we do for the broad community.
So in reality, for this very small token, our town is gaining so much benefit to all of the residents because your programming and what you've done with that facility is just the crown jewel of our town. Thank you so much for your efforts.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I agree. I think it's a win-win for all of us. I think that, you know, the Fairfield Museum has always raised its own support, and I think that hopefully we bring the town exponential benefits based on their investment.
I think so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I think we're all set. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Mr. Jelly.
Great, and thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the museum.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
The next item is the Sullivan McKinney Elder Housing, which is number 2370 on page 123. Ms. Greco, would you like to talk to us about that? I think you're on mute. You are on mute.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Ruth Ann. I'm the administrator for Sullivan McKinney Elder Housing. We are asking the town and we are thanking the town for your support throughout the years. We are 2028 Section 8 senior housing, a 40-unit property. We have been here since 1989.
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
There's an echo, and I'm wondering, it might be if you turn off your computer. Yeah, that might help.
I am so sorry.
That's okay. That's better. That's good.
I'm wondering if that's better.
I think that's working better.
Okay, hi, it's Ruth Ann from Sullivan McKinney. And we would like to thank the town throughout the years with donations to our Sullivan McKinney Elder Housing and our senior population. We are asking for the money that we are requesting to fix the chimney on the roof. We have taken out a green retrofit grant in 2010. And we did the envelope of the building, but unfortunately that did not include the chimney. And the chimney is in desperate repair, has the mortar, and there's bricks on the roof. So that's why we were coming to you this year in hopes of helping us with getting those improvements that are much needed to the upkeep of our building and for the benefit of our seniors. And I'm sorry for the echoing.
That's okay. Technology. It's giving us a lot of trouble tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Greco? Representative Beauvais?
Hi, this is Lauren Beauvais, District 7. My question to you is regarding the safety of the chimney. You said bricks are on the roof and there's mortar?
My superintendent does inspect the building, and he just seen a piece of a brick mortar that he took off of the roof. And we do an inspection of the building because the government does come and inspect. So we have to make sure we're on top of everything, which includes an inspection. And he noticed that there was a piece of mortar on the roof. With closer examination, we noticed that the chimney does need some attention. And we did have contractors come out, and they will have to stage the roof and fix the mortar as well as the crown. But right now, no one is in any danger of bricks falling. We're being proactive, and hopefully we will have this done sometime in June. So that's what we make sure that we go around the building, we check the bricks, landscaping, basement. It's all in our inspections, and that was something that the superintendent pointed out to myself and the board of directors.
Representative Beauvais?
I just wanted to, I know that you're going to say yes, but I feel like I've got to ask it. Like my kids would tell you, I ask these questions, they are doing the right thing. But I ask them anyway because I have to. You guys have carbon monoxide detectors around?
Absolutely. Yes, we do.
I knew you were going to say that. I'm apologizing for asking. I'm just compelled to.
Yes, we have sprinklers. In our boiler room, we have the detectors throughout the building. And I also wanted to invite, if anyone would ever like to come out to Sullivan McKinney, you're more than welcome to meet our residents and tour our facility.
I would love to do that. How would I get in touch
with you? That would be wonderful.
How would I reach you? What's the best way? Then I'll take
email or phone number.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Representative Rivera.
Hi. So is this building, this is what you lease from the town or?
Yes, we do have a lease with the town, and the town does have a co-tenant as well. So it's myself and a co-tenant.
Okay, so actually these improvements will go towards a town asset. This is really a town-owned building that you lease from us, so
Absolutely.
you're improving a town.
It is a town building.
Okay.
That is correct.
Different to me. And I also, so I have heard about an issue with the utility payments. And I know you're a HUD facility and you can't cover other people's expenses. Have you been reimbursed for the $5,000 of utility expenses that you were supposed to be, or from the co-lessee, or is that still an issue?
So if I could just interject for a moment,
yes.
Mrs. Bagara, this is an issue between the town and the lessees, and this is a issue that we're working on, and I'm not sure this is an appropriate discussion to be having before the RTM at this time.
I disagree, because one of the co-lessees is coming before us for more money, and if they're in arrears, I have an issue with giving someone who's been delinquent more money.
So there is an issue with the lease agreement, and we are working on it as a town to determine the fairness of the equity of the lease. So that's really not an issue for the RTM.
It's a contract. It's a contract that the RTM approves. We do leases. It was an issue. I spoke to the town attorney. I didn't want to make it public, and I wanted this issue resolved because I was going to raise it for the leases. And it hasn't been resolved, and it's taking too long. And these are elderly citizens in need, and they're not in a position to be paying $5,000 for somebody else.
So we have worked on resolving the issue at hand, and we are now working, and I'm setting up a meeting with the two groups to sit down and bang out a new lease agreement.
Okay, it was a pre-existing lease, so it was already, these are owed. It's owed from 3 years ago, I think.
Right.
So it's been a while. So I can see going forward, fixing it for going forward, but this is $5,000 that Sullivan McKinney should not have to pay.
That has been resolved, Representative.
Okay, I'd like to hear it from Sullivan McKinney, but it has been going on for an undue amount of time, and it really shouldn't have happened.
Our board of directors have been working with the first select woman. And there is a letter that was sent out to the first select woman, excuse me, and she should receive that letter, and we will wait for her response in regards to that. So we have been working on that together.
Okay.
So we're waiting to hear from you, first select woman Brenda Kupchik.
Yes, we can
So
receive it.
she will be back in touch with
They're going to
us.
set up. Thank you very much.
Representative Georgiadis.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Drew Georgiadis, District 9. My question was initially for Sullivan McKinney, but perhaps now that I know that the building is owned by the town, maybe First Selectwoman Kupchik could answer this. I'm not sure how old the boiler is, and I know with chimneys, like, does the chimney still use the boiler? Is this money, good money after bad is what I'm asking? Is this money need to be spent, or do we need to reconsider the whole heating system in this building and possibly remove the chimney?
If I may.
Could you please look into that?
Well, I actually own a heating and air conditioning company as well, and typically, even if you're going to change out a boiler, many systems still utilize the flue. So I think this
That's
is minor
correct.
And Sullivan McKinney can chime in here. It's like $7,500 just to fix some mortar issues on the chimney. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I do want to back up and say that the boilers were newly installed through a green retrofit grant that Sullivan McKinney acquired. So the boilers are new as of 2010. So they're 11 years old.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very
And
much.
that is correct, around $8,000, but that doesn't include staging of the chimney.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Greco, for coming tonight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks. Next is the Kennedy Center, item 2430 on page 125. Is Ms. Munoz here? Ms. Munoz? If you are on a call, you need to press *6 to be able to speak. That may be what's going on. I know we're having so many technical problems tonight.
Thank you.
Karen, it's Betsy. She was kicked off earlier.
Oh, I think she's on. Was that you, Ms. Munoz?
It is. Thank you so much. I did have difficulty connecting online, but I'm successful on phone. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
The Kennedy Center is requesting support to provide not only employment opportunity and services, but we're also looking to provide day-to-day assistance with home care, medical appointments, therapeutic services, and recreational for people with disabilities in Fairfield. The Kennedy Center was founded in 1951, and we're actually entering our 70th year of service this month. We continue to provide these services from birth through senior years, and we do it not only through our social enterprises, but throughout our programming.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Munoz about the Kennedy Center? Oh, I think we're all set. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. The next is the Pilot House, item 2470 on page 129. Ms. Caruso, I see that you're here with us.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hi. Pilot House has been in existence now for 15 years in the town of Fairfield, and we started our program in the basement of a school building here in town, and have grown into our location at 240 Colony Street, as well as our community farm. We were severely impacted this year by COVID because of the fragile nature of the students and medically fragile students that we deal with. Our center did close. So that is part of the issue, the main issue actually, with the utilities at Sullivan McKinney, because we weren't there. So that is the issue. We were not there because of COVID. We would periodically stop in to check the building, get mail, answer phone calls. So that was the issue, which again, as the select woman said, we are in negotiations because we didn't feel it was fair for us to be paying an exorbitant oil and water bill usage when there was no one there using those utilities. So that is what the issue is. With that being said, we realized the need in our community and stepped up to the plate and utilized our farm because people were scared to have their children inside a closed-in building during the pandemic. So my staff quickly reshuffled and reorganized what our services were and opened up our program to the entire community, not only the special needs community, but young adults and children that were now suffering from depression, anxiety, social anxiety, because they were locked up inside their home. So we opened up our firm to the entire community of Fairfield, not just our special needs population that has been supporting us through the last 15 years. So we have been asking for an increase from the town for quite a few years. This is not the first year we've asked for the increase because of the 2 locations that we are servicing. We not only service special needs children, but we also service veterans in our farm. So we have really expanded what we provide in service to the town of community to a very underprivileged and need that's within our community, especially now with mental health. Our NAMI situation is dire right now. The suicide attempts are at an exorbitant amount of rate, and we are seeing an increase in our services needed at our therapeutic farm. So we have really stepped up to the plate and expanded our hours. My staff is not full pay. Most of them are partial pay. I do not receive a salary. I forfeit my salary every year to go back into the organization to keep us moving forward so that we are here to continue to provide a service to our community. The 8 now, including the 10,000 that we're asking for, is an 8% in our budget. But what that does is, just like Mike said from Fairfield Museum, it gives us that opportunity to then go out and to raise the remaining money that we need to fund our programs and services that we do provide to our community. So we do thank you for what you've done for us for the last 15 years. We wouldn't be able to do that without the town support behind us.
Thank you very much. I think some of us don't know what this is all about Sullivan McKinney and Pilot House, but I think I would like to agree with Representative Kupchik that we should discuss it because it sounds like a dispute that is not what this isn't the place for.
I agree.
But if anyone has, if anyone has any questions for Ms. Caruso, please let me know.
I have a question.
Who's that?
This is Hannah Gale, District 6, sorry.
Okay, Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Caruso, I'm just concerned about what you said regarding the increased issues with suicide attempts and the demands that this is making on your program. And I'm wondering if you have staff working together with the other not-for-profits addressing this concern in Fairfield.
This is a new issue that we've just started to involve ourselves in. To be quite honest, we've had several students that have been part of our organization for a few years that we've been managing. The increase now is really coming to our attention in full focus. So we are in the process now of revamping the services that we do provide. And our animal therapy, our staff is certified through PATH for animal therapy, which does deal with social emotional situations. So we are in the process now of reaching out to other organizations to work with them as well, such as Bridge House, who has a great model.
That is wonderful, and I'm just wondering if in fact, like, out of all the programs here, maybe yours needs a little extra money to expand that part of your work.
We would welcome that. But again, knowing the budget restraints and what the town is going through and what everybody else is going through, we just feel that, we are looking, like I said, to do grants, and that's where the town support does come in. Obviously this year, everybody's taken a huge hit with fundraising. The town worked very hard with us this past fall for us to have our fundraiser, to have it. It wasn't as successful as it's been in the past, but they worked tirelessly to help us make it a successful event. I'm proud to say that through contact tracing, we didn't have one case of COVID come through our facility. And I was very proud of that and would like to thank First Select Woman for that, as well as Chief McCarthy, who and Sans Clary for all of their support in helping us make a successful event. And we're hoping that we will also be able to have that again in the spring.
Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. Very moved.
Thank you. So again, I'd like to open our doors if anybody would like to take a tour of our farm. That is what's open now. We're hoping to get our office back up and running soon. We do have some students now that are starting to partake now that school has gone back in session. So we're hoping to be able to, and we're doing some changes over there to get us back up and running soon. So anybody would like to have a tour of the farm at this time, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again for your support.
Right. I should mention too that unfortunately we don't have the power to increase anything in the budget. So even though this and many other charities are close to our hearts, the RTM is not empowered to do that. But,
I completely understand.
Yeah.
I do recall
we
that.
do have
Thank
a
you,
request. Sure. We do have a request. If you could share the address of the farm, would you mind doing that?
Sure. It is 1230 Merwins Lane, and it is by appointment. So my number is 203-610-3877. We're keeping everybody safe. We've run a very tight ship during COVID.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you for your support.
Okay. So we'll move on to the Center for Family Justice, which is number 2480 on page 131. Mr. Antonini, I see that you're here with us tonight.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I hope everyone can hear me. I want to, first of all, thank you all for the opportunity not only to speak tonight, but to thank you for all the support that the Center for Family Justice has received from the town of Fairfield over many, many years. For those of you that don't know, the Center for Family Justice provides free and confidential services for all victims and survivors of domestic violence, sexual violence, and child abuse. This month, the month of April, we actually have the tree at the town green is lit lit in the colors of blue and teal. The lights are lit in blue and teal for Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Awareness Month. And we did actually go down and see the tree actually on April 1st when it was lit, and it's lit every night during the month of April. So thank you very much for that. Very, very quickly, as others have mentioned, COVID has been very difficult, the pandemic for our clients. We've had a 26% increase in domestic violence, and you've probably heard this nationwide, but this is right here in our area. We've had a 196% increase in restraining orders, and a 51% increase in emergency shelter. We've had to put clients in hotels, which is really something new and for us. And the cost is approximately $10,000 a month. And this has been going on for 1 year. You could look back to last April, and here we are now this April, and it's still continuing. The good news on that is we are getting some money from FEMA. But I really appreciate the support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I don't think so. Thank you for all the work you do. I know how very important it is.
Well, we thank you once again. I appreciate it.
Needed.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
have
you.
a good evening.
Thank you all. Thank you.
We'll move next to retiree, which is 1310 on page 270. Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Chikurda. You here? Okay.
Mr. Chikurda is here. Don't know where Jared is.
Hi. I think he's a
Madam Moderator, I believe you might have skipped over Operation Hope on the list.
No, actually, they had something come up, and they're going to talk to us tomorrow.
Gotcha. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right. Good evening.
Hi, Jared.
Okay. Hi. So an OPEB, frankly, OPEB and pension, both of them, if I take them as a group, fairly simple this year. They're both funded at the level of the ADEC, based on the calculation done by the actuary. If you remember, how could anyone forget the OPEB, as the first selectwoman mentioned in her opening? That was one of the cliffs at $3.8 million. So one of the things that we're doing in here is fully funding that clip and getting rid of it. So what's in the budget book is a little bit different, and I believe you all received a change sheet based on some of the changes that happened in the Board of Selectmen and also the Board of Finance. So the amounts for both OPEB and and pension will differ from what you have in the budget book. And if you look at the change sheet that was sent out earlier, you'll see the differences there. And basically what that was is we had for OPEB, there was an initial sort of tentative number that we had prior to a roll forward number that we had from the actuaries prior to them completing the actuarial analysis last week, 2 weeks ago, I believe. And so the increases that are in OPEB on that sheet are the result of the finalizing the OPEB actuarial valuation. As for pension, what was originally in the first Selectwoman's budget was a do no harm amount, essentially flat funding it at the current year level for next year. And so what the Board of Finance did was they reduced it slightly to basically conform to what the ADEC is, based on the valuation done by the actuaries. I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's a long-winded way of saying we're funding the ADEC in both of these, but just to give you the background.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see any. I think we're good. So this
I have a
is on
question.
both the OPEB
I'm sorry.
Yeah, who's that?
Rick Brower.
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, could they explain the retirement contributions for the 401A?
Did you hear that,
it's
Jared?
up over the previous year?
Yes, those are, so the increase there is based on, so the 401A is when there was a change for new employees coming in who are no longer qualified for the pension, the defined benefit plan that had been in place and is still in place, but is closed to new employees for the town plan anyway. And so the amount there for the 401A is for the new plan, the new defined contribution plan. And that's what that number represents, is the town's match to what the employees put in.
That's a matching contribution or a fixed percentage?
I'm sorry?
Am I muted again?
No, we can hear you, Rick.
I
Can you
can
just
hear
repeat it?
Is
I
that
didn't understand the
a
question.
matching contribution to the employee's contribution, or is it a set percentage of their pay?
It's a match up to, I believe it's a match up to 5% of their other salary.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions on these items? Okay, Mr. Gerber, Representative Gerber.
Yeah, hi. Question for Stefan. Can you just confirm the funding this year is the ADAC, but does it make up for what wasn't funded last year, or is it just going back on a trajectory for what would have been the rate per year without? Yeah.
It takes into account what the assets were at that point in time. So those assets weren't in the plan when the ADEC was determined. So it would include some of that underfunded. It wouldn't include a full the full, if you say it was 3.8 million, it wouldn't have include the full amount of that, because that's going to be spread out over the
okay.
the 20 period.
So you haven't kept sort of the ADAC that was in existence last year and funded last year's and this year's, the differential from last year and this year's. You recalculated the ADAC based on
Correct.
the underfunding last year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on these items? Okay, so I think we could go on to the fund balance, which is item 2020 on page 102. Mr. Schmidt?
Sure. Fund balance, same type of thing here, where there was an amount that was put into the first select woman's budget, and that amount was based on a do no harm provision. So currently, the amount that is in our fund balance is about 11.04% of the total budget, and so the amount which was originally put in, $2.22 million, was to keep it at that level, so keep it at the 11.04% level. And so what the Board of Finance did, so there will still be a contribution to the fund balance of that amount. However, what they're doing is cutting out $1.2 million in the operating budget, and the plan is to fund that out of this year's surplus. As the first select woman mentioned, there's a sizable surplus, and to take a reasonable, per the first select woman's request, to take a reasonable amount of that money in the surplus and use it for something like this, in order to keep taxes lower.
Okay. Are there any questions on this item? I can't tell, Mr. Gerber, if yours
yes,
is
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So Bill Gerber, Jared, it's hard to have this question about surplus without talking about the fund balance without talking about surplus. So can you the surplus, when you were meeting with the Board of Finance, the surplus, I think, was, what did you say, was at that point it was like 3.2 million or 3.1 million?
That's right, 3.2 million.
3.2 million, and that was really for half the year, right?
No, it's through the end of the year.
Oh, so that was a projection.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And now that you're, I mean, do you have? So we don't have the tax collection tonight, I guess, but so we're in April. Do you have a revised number, like, now that we're into April, or is it still 3.2 million?
It's 3.2 million still.
Oh, okay, so you essentially took a million you took the 2.2 million contribution, you reduced it by $1 million, right, at the Board of Finance?
The Board of Finance reduced it.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So they reduced it by 1.2 million.
1.2, so it's now 1 million.
1 million from the operating budget, and then the 1.2 would come out of the current year surplus.
Right. So I'm sorry, 1 million from the operating budget, and then 3.2 million from surplus.
No,
right?
1.2. 1.2 from surplus would be used.
Oh, okay. 1.2 from surplus. So the rest of the surplus, what's going to happen with that?
We still have 3 months left in the fiscal year, and we do have. There are a couple other smaller things that are tended to be funded out of the surplus based on action from the Board of Finance. But we also have some mounting legal bills related to the fill pile.
Did you? I forget. Did you?
The Board of Finance was hesitant to take too much out of this, per the First Selectwoman's suggestion, to not take too much out of it, just because we don't know what's going to, you know, last year was a perfect example. Who knows what the next 3 months are going to bring? And in addition, we do know that there are going to be some additional costs related to the fill pile, legal costs.
Right, and do you have an estimate for that? Have you sort of disclosed an estimate for that? Because I thought, so you've got like 2 million cushion right now in what you're projecting for the surplus, or over 2 million, right? And how much would your current estimate of the legal bills, you know, eat into that?
First Selectwoman's going to address that question.
Bill, we're facing significant exposure, as you know, on all of the stuff that happened with the fill pile issue. And so, no, we don't know exactly. And we also received, and I told the other board, we recently received a notice of violation regarding a property in the Bullard Square area that the town apparently had said in 2012 they were going to clean or do some kind of remediation work to, and never did. So I don't have all the details. We're still going through to try to figure out what's going on here, but we definitely have, we're definitely exposed. And so we don't know the extent of their exposure. And I just felt that we need to have something in there to make sure that we can cover the costs associated with testing and legal fees. And I mean, we're paying a fair amount of money to the environmental attorney for all the fill pile issues, all the consent orders, all the associated sites. There's just so much. So I just think that we need to have some cushion to make sure that we're covered as well.
Yeah, but currently,
I do not have an exact number at this point, no.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you to. So but the current cushion is what? Is it 2? Is what 2.2 million or 2 million? Jared, it's 2 million, right?
So assuming that the 1.2 is adopted ultimately, then
right.
you'd have about $2 million left in there, minus there's a capital outlay for the park and rec, which is being moved to surplus, so probably just under, somewhere around $1.8 million.
Okay.
What the balance would be. As of right now, that's our projection.
Okay, and if that doesn't, let's say, I don't know, let's say 800,000 of it gets used for these other things that you're talking about, just hypothetical, and then there's $1 million left over. What happens to the $1 million at the end of the year? That's just that just goes into surplus, right? So the 11% then would go up higher.
Right. If it stayed in there and there was no action taken on it, and when the books are closed, that money would go into the fund balance.
But you would have an opportunity to take some action on it and use it for some other purpose, right?
Correct. Yep. Yeah.
And because the 11% is the cap, right? We're not supposed to go over 11% from what I remember reading it. It's the fund balance is supposed to stay at or under 11, like 7.5 to 11%, right?
Yeah, I think you would have to clarify that with the Board of Finance and what this is a policy that they've adopted.
Right.
And I know they are concerned about, I don't remember what the cap on it was, and I know they are looking into possibly increasing that cap. Whatever.
And does the Board of Finance have the last, like, I know they have the last word, but you could go below. I mean, if it's 7.5 to 11, like you're First Selectwoman Kupchak, you could go to 10 or 9, right?
No.
Oh, that's up to the Board of Finance. They would. Yeah.
Well, stepping out.
Bill,
the Board of Finance sets the policy on the fund balance, and they're looking at reconstituting their fund balance committee. Mr. Walsh is the chairperson of that. And they mentioned during the Board of Finance meetings, I'm sure a lot of you watched those meetings, and they're talking about reconstituting that committee and changing the parameters based on current conditions. So I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but I know I don't have the authority. And listen,
you don't have the authority to adjust.
We have these town bodies for a reason. I've worked closely with the Board of Finance throughout this budget process to make sure that we were covering our bases and doing the fiscally responsible things that they believe are important, and that I also believe are important. So, listen, we all did a lot of things last year to make sure we had a zero. And, you know, it's like anything else. You know, you charge up a credit card and you got to pay it. Or you go to dinner and you shouldn't be surprised when the bill comes due. So,
I'm just talking about the fund balance because honestly, I assume we have the power to cut that, and I have to say, you know, with all due respect, I just didn't understand the conversation at the Board of Finance level, like with some of the members. It made no sense to me, you know, to go above 11%. I've actually recall meetings in the past when that committee did meet. And, you know, I never heard anyone, even some people that are on that committee now, never mentioned going above 11%. And it's just very strange to me, you know, if we're not going to use it in the once in 100-year pandemic, we're never going to use it. So I don't understand that. And I would, you know, I just don't understand it. But anyway, apparently that's not your.
You know, they could potentially, listen, if things, you know, if we use this surplus money, like we're saying, we could either change the designation to it at the end and use it for our legal issues and our remediation issues. And even if it goes into the fund balance, you know, I've had conversations with the Board of Finance, but they could still consider using that money. I mean, we do have a significant exposure due to this, you know, public corruption and hazardous waste, environmental contamination issue that just doesn't ever seem to end, and it's going to be really expensive. So, you know, Bill, maybe they will use it to cover some of these costs. We still don't have all the final remediation expectations from DEP on the fill pile, even though they just finished the second round of testing over there. But we don't have the costs yet, and the groundwater monitoring, all that. As I mentioned, I don't know if it was just to you guys or maybe it was to the Board of Finance. You know, Gould Manor, while not completely associated with the fill pile, just the sidewalk area, you know, uncovered a historical contamination at that park. And, you know, we've got to clean it up. And it's not going to be, it's going to cost money, right? And so this environmental attorney who's really been helping us a lot with all of the regulations and things we have to jump through with DEP and EPA, we still have our 7 sites we have to clean up, which Ty and Bond wanted to do another round of testing, even though we had the consent orders, just to make sure everything was in order. But those bills are going to come due. They're going to say, okay, Mrs. Kupchak, here you go. Here's the remediation plan. This is the bill.
Okay.
And every single person in this town, all of you guys and me, are going to want to say, yes, let's do it. Let's fix it. So
yeah,
the fund balance could potentially, you know, listen, I'm willing to go to the Board of Finance if we exhaust our surplus and we need that money. I'm willing to say, hey, can we take the money out of the fund balance to cover it?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, we have with a big tax increase this year, you know, and a tough economy, and the idea of adding to the fund balance seems a little wacky to me. So, but I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
I hear you, Bill, but you know, I think that, I mean, listen, right now we're at a 1.12 mill rate increase.
Well, on top of a 4.5% appraisal value increase. So, you know, I don't think, you know.
I mean, well, that's for some people, not everybody, right? So the
What's the
assessor,
average?
in his presentation,
I get it. It's
told us
the,
a third people went down, a third stayed the same, and a third went up.
yeah, but on average, appraisal values went up 4.5%. So on average, people are going to be seeing, over 5% on average. So it's a big, it's a big hit, even though obviously it could be worse, but it's a big hit. And the discussion around adding to the fund balance, just logging my concern. I'm very concerned about that sort of attitude.
No, I hear you, Bill.
Yeah.
But, even that amount to the fund balance, that doesn't come close to the other clips we all created last year. And, that takes up the lion's share of this whole thing. I mean, if we didn't have those clips that we had to pay back, we would literally be under. We would be below zero.
Yeah, I mean,
and
but
so,
two or a million.
But, I never saw the town really judge a revaluation amount based on the mill rate. The mill rate is the mill rate.
I mean, we haven't had an upwards revaluation over 1% in 15 years. The last time was 2005, and it was like 66%. Can you imagine if when it went up by 66%, if we said, guess what, we're not raising the mill rate, we're just going to raise taxes by 66%. I mean, no one would buy that. I understand what you're saying, but it's the first time we've had a big appraisal value increase that's going to hurt people financially, although there'll be the people whose valuations go up, that's fine. But, this is the first time in 15 years. So we haven't had this discussion in a decade and a half. And people are going to, a lot of people are going to get hurt. And so I just don't think, I think we should be thinking about either like not adding to the surplus, at least not going overboard. So that I'm just logging how I'm thinking now, and other people can consider it, during the week.
No, I understand, Bill.
Yeah.
I do.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other comments on the fund balance and contribution to surplus? Okay, so we'll move on to debt service, which is on page 280, number 1003.
Okay. And if you go back to page 279, is kind of lays out the calculation of how we get to the debt service number. This is our financial advisor who does the calculations and puts this number before us. And so we've taken that number. But just to give you a quick overview of how the calculation works, we're paying on the bonds, the regular bonds that we sell, we're paying the interest and the principal cost of that. That's offset by premiums that we receive, any premiums that we received and that we have received over any of the last 3 years. So for premium received on a typical bond, we have to apply that premium over a period of 3 years. We're required to apply it over a period of 3 years. So essentially, we have our principal, our interest, and then that is offset by the amount of premium that we use. So that reduces the amount. Same thing for the bands. Although the amount for the bands, the amount of premium that we get on bands has to be used within 1 year. So that amount we have the principal and interest on the bands that we sell, and then that gets reduced by a year's worth of premium. And so this is other than that, it's pretty straightforward. This is the number that we get from our financial advisor, and that's what we have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions about the debt service? Okay, so we'll move on to finance. Jared, this is on page 142, item 3010.
Okay, so the one really noteworthy thing here is the addition of a part-time person, which is the grants coordinator. And I think the first select woman talked about this in her opening, that and it's kind of been mentioned throughout this conversation about the federal funding and, you know, what we can use that money for. Well, this is, you know, this position would be to help us find some of those grants that might be available, and find opportunities where we can find other sources of funding, whether it be state, federal, private, any other sources of funding. And then, but in addition to that, the person is going to be responsible for also monitoring these grants and making sure that, you know, that we're compliant with whatever the criteria are for being eligible and retaining those grants. Other than that, the department budget is basically flat.
Okay. Are there any questions on this? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much, Mr. Schmidt. And we'll move to Dave Kelly for information technology on page 156. And I have to say, Dave has been a lifesaver this year, allowing us to be able to do these meetings remotely, and he runs them, the back part of it for me, so I don't have to focus on it. So I just am very, very grateful to you, Dave.
Okay. So thank you for having me. If you look at page 156, you'll see that, oh my goodness, we've asked for an 11.92% increase, but it's really not as exciting as all of that. Roughly half of that, 5.7%, is simply restoring the capital outlay that was cut in half last year in preparation for or over concerns on COVID. The capital outlay line in IT is used to gradually replace over time the PCs, laptops, things like that, on roughly a 5-year replacement cycle. The other thing that's happened this year is that a number of our contracts have expired simultaneously. In IT, our 3 largest expenses are the town-wide network, the Microsoft software licensing agreement, and Munis. And 2 of those are purchased on 3- and 5-year long contracts at a fixed price. It just happens that this year everything is expired, and now we're facing the step increase after a flat price for 3 or 5 years to the new price, which accounts for a majority of the rest of the increase. Of course, the other software products that just renew year to year go up generally a little faster than inflation every year, so that's in there as well. Lastly, I do have 3 small recommended increases that would be permanent annual increases. One is to purchase an online forms processing product. As you may be aware, we're in the process right now of installing a new online permitting system that will be used by many departments in town. But there's a lot of business in town that just falls between the cracks. It doesn't fit into a permitting system, doesn't fit into any of our other existing systems, where departments do have fill-out forms online that currently you download, you print, you fill them out by hand, and you either scan them and send them back, or you put them in snail mail and send them back. So we've looked at a couple of software products that will allow us to just do all of that online, and we're recommending that we acquire that we would probably implement perhaps after we finish doing the permit system. Another item that I'm suggesting that we permanently add to the budget is some additional managed security monitoring of our town internet connection. We've examined some online services available through the Connecticut Education Network that would do a better job of protecting us from viruses and ransomware, things like that. And lastly, the town has quite a number of security camera systems that it kind of can't seem to figure out that there's anywhere where those are held or maintained. So I'm suggesting that the IT department take over the responsibility for the town's security systems, camera systems, and I've put in a suggested $15,000 a year for us to go around through all of the various town sites and do 1 or 2 sites per year, upgrade the systems. At the moment, we have a number of very old systems. Many of them, the vendors of them have gone out of the business, that are no longer supported, are running old software, and it's just not safe to have out-of-date software systems in the town network. And in other instances, departments have gone out and purchased very, very, very inexpensive Chinese camera systems and put them on the network. We just can't have untrusted, unknown devices being connected to the town network. So I think that we kind of need to take those on as for both security and reliability purposes. And as camera systems these days are largely IT devices, I think it's appropriate that the IT department do that.
Okay, thank you. Representative Pistilli.
Hi, Representative Pistilli, District 3. Sometimes people don't get what they bargain for with their jobs, and you really have shouldered so much of the responsibility of the town government being able to still work. So if we were in a crowded room right now, we'd all be clapping for you. I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of all of us. And then I had a couple of questions. I remember we had the long discussion about the software that MetroCog was going to be purchasing. I think for the permitting process, that I can't remember off the top of my head. I know I have a ton of notes on it. But anyway, I was wondering if, like, through MetroCog, perhaps they have an online form system that we've already, like, contributed to, that we might have access to or have access to for a lower price.
I don't believe they do, and you are thinking of MetroCog did come through and suggest that they could use a software vendor to create a permit system from scratch using a document imaging system called Laserfish. The fact is that they did not have a permitting system to offer us at the time, and what they were looking to develop isn't anywhere near as comprehensive as the system that we actually went out to RFP and selected and are currently implementing. So they are looking to try to do, I think there is one town in MetroCog that they are still trying to develop something that'll kind of process permits, but it's not anything like what we mean when we say permit system in Fairfield.
Got it. But there's no purchasing power in the other towns that already purchase like an online forms interface?
I'm not aware that MetroCog has done anything like that. So I'm not aware that they have any such offer or have done any such thing.
Okay. And then one other question. So I'm sure you're aware that, like, at the beginning of the pandemic or a couple of months into the pandemic, there was a rash of ransomware attacks on hospitals, and like they were like coming from overseas, or they're keeping hospitals, from operating. And I'm just wondering, as a result of those attacks, if there's anything federally, like with the Department of Homeland Security or something, if there are any grants that we could get to offset the costs of these, the security threats that we see that we face that are increasing every year. Is that something we could apply to federal funds for?
Well, I don't know of any federal funds to do that, but we have just recently joined the CISA, that's the Center for Internet Security's MS-ISAC group. That's the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And we can get a lot of security services from them for free as a municipality. And we're actually doing that with them right now. So there are a number of things that we can get at no cost to the town. One of them is we can get something that actually provides us with what's called a curated domain name service. That is, even if an email message comes through and gets past all of our anti-spam, antivirus, anti-scam stuff, and it still ends up in your mailbox, and it has a link in it, and you click it, this specially curated naming service will actually block you from getting to the harmful site. So that's a service that we can get for free. Other services we can get are, and we're going to do this, is what's called penetration testing. It's where they, as good guys, actually try to break into the town network from the outside. They try to see what a malicious actor can see in what's called a white hat operation. That is, the good guys try to figure out if you've got any holes or vulnerabilities that can be easily exploited from the outside, versus the black hats, which are the bad guys. And also, they do offer a vulnerability analysis of your network and systems. So these are all things that, no, it's not a grant that we have to go get, but they are services that we can employ for free. So to me, that's just as good.
Yeah, that's great.
So there's a lot of stuff we can get, but there are some things like one of the items that I'm suggesting that we just add to our environment this year, which is the monitored internet connection. It's more than just a device sitting there protecting the town. It's actually human beings that are monitoring the device to actually act upon something that looks suspicious. That's something that you don't just get for free. It costs money to do that. But the Connecticut Education Network is an example of one of the organizations that we already work with. We buy our town internet bandwidth from them very inexpensively already. And they do a group buy, group purchase thing. So we're looking, the dollar amount that I'm expecting we'll need is far lower than if we were to go out on our own and get those services. They're exploiting the size of their network and their users to get good pricing on such a service.
Got it. All right, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that context. Okay. And thanks again for saving us this year.
My pleasure. I didn't do it alone.
That's true. Thanks to your whole department. Are there any other questions for Mr. Kelly? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Dave.
I have a question.
And, oh yes, who's that?
Rick Brower. Mr. Kelly.
Okay, Rick, go ahead.
There's been a lot of talk about updating the building department with online permitting. Is that in your budget, the software required to do that, or is that going to be in the building department budget?
That's going to be in my budget. And it's actually I think I have it in my notes for the budget. Right now, the town uses a combination of 3 different software systems for permits. There are 2 commercial systems, and then there's a lot of software that was written in-house over the past 20 years. We're looking to replace all of that with just this one permitting system. So currently, one of those commercial products that's in use right now it's been funded all along by the IT department, and then the building department funded another smaller product. Those will go away and be replaced with the new system, and we're going to be paying that out of IT. The way it works is, generally speaking, if software in town is used by many departments, the IT budget pays for it. So whether it's Munis or Microsoft Windows or in this case now the permitting system, because it's not just the building department, it's a half a dozen or more departments that'll be sharing it. Those are paid through IT. But you'll also see departments come to you with their own software budgets. For example, the police department. They have computer-aided dispatch software. It is only used by the police department, so it's paid by that department kind of as a way to allocate the cost to where the software is actually used. And as I understand it, that change where they kind of centrally used software is paid for through IT, but software that's unique to departments was distributed out to departments. I think that happened the year before I arrived in town, roughly 2015. So that's kind of how we pick and choose what's paid for out of the IT budget versus what comes to you from each of the departments.
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other questions? Okay, I think we're all set. Thank you, Dave. And I think we're done for the evening, and we'll be back here tomorrow, same place, same time, 7 p.m. tomorrow for the continuation of our hearings. So we will see everybody tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.